All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host, Ben, and this is your week 32 review show. And so, leading off the headlines of what happened last week, Liverpool and Arsenal are the first two to blink in the title race. And before that, Man City got a chance to play on Saturday, apply a little pressure first. And all they did was score after about 70 seconds of play. Freak-like goal after Kevin De Bruyne had played in Holland in behind. Holland made a meal of the 1v1, but City kept it alive thanks to a nice little run and dribble by Jeremy Doku. He had a shot that was deflected and blocked, and then Holland was able to get a second chance at it, and his volley basically deflected off the defender Hashioko to go in. Uh, but it did take a little while for the second goal to come. They scored after the first 7 minutes. You were wondering, I mean, this is going to be a high number. And it ended up being. Uh, but it did take a while for the second to come in. They had like 25 shots, though, after about the first half. So you figured it was only a matter of time before it did. And then it came from a bit of a surprise with Kovacic having just one of those worldies that he seems like scoring. There's some players that just seem to when they score they're usually screamers, and Kovacic seems to be that kind of player. And then Doku was able to get free, drew a PK. Holland converted, and then Doku scored himself. And then Gvardiol basically ended with the last goal, basically continuing his really good week of football. This is a guy that hadn't scored all season for Man City, and all he's done is score two wonderful curlers from outside the box from in the past 5 days or so. And so City won and added to the goal differential as well. And so, what would the others do in response? And fall down is the answer. Banana peels are still out there. Van Dijk literally found one and was saved from Robinson from forever being compared to Steven Gerrard. But yeah, Liverpool lost to Crystal Palace at Anfield 1-0 thanks to a really well worked goal finished off by Eze. But Palace had like 20 consecutive passes in this move and just made Liverpool look foolish, just chasing the ball. It didn't seem like there was any kind of structure as far as what to do without it, and they just kept running after the ball, leaving people open in the box, and Eze was able to basically have a tap in, completely unmarked, and Liverpool were not able to respond after that. They did play well in the second half, very very poor first half, but did in the game with another one of those what if kind of moments where they created like three or four really big chances in that second half, and again just weren't able to finish them away. Been a theme really. The second half of the calendar year, and I'll get to that. I'll basically lead off with that, uh, and it's significant not just for Liverpool to lose to a team like Palace who was struggling. They did it was a different Palace. They had Eze and Elise back, and they've only had him for like 4 games all season, an entirely makeshift back line, but it's also the second. I think it's only the second loss of Van Dijk's career in the EPL in the English Premier League, but second loss in a week. So Liverpool because they got thumped by Atalanta in the midweek, so things are not necessarily looking great. But Arsenal also showed a little vulnerability, and they showed it versus Bayern on Tuesday, where they showcased I thought something similar versus Brighton. Brighton just weren't the week before. Brighton just weren't able to make any of those moments count. So Arsenal won that game 3-0. People thought Arsenal were some juggernaut, and I thought they showed a little glimpses here and there of where teams can maybe get at them. And Unai Emery is one of those that ends up doing it, and he gets the double on his former club side, and that ends up being a bit of a story as well. But it wasn't just Unai Emery returning to the Emirates; it was Emery Martinez, and Arsenal fans are gonna hate this. Emery Martinez was part of the game plan basically. They blew up how Arsenal like to play without the ball, how they like to high press with two, where they usually just kind of hound the center backs and then have a little token pressure on the goalkeeper, and then the goalkeeper boots it away. And usually Arsenal with their high line are usually able to win. That ball after it goes long, and Aston Villa were not necessarily doing that. They were actually playing through Arsenal a little bit, just having Emery Martinez just straight hold on to the ball, forcing Arsenal to creep up a little bit further. And it got to a point where Arsenal had two kind of pressing three, and they were never really able to have the numbers in their advantage. And Aston Villa just really took control of the game in the second half. Paul Torres was another player who was just splitting lines. Tielemans as well, just constantly was popping up and being an extra man Arsenal weren't covering. And then when Arsenal did seem to have the numbers in their favor, they would just go in long and finding Zaniolo, who was just posting up on Ben White time after time. And then the goals finally came. So it's not enough to have a game plan and play well. You also need to finish the chances. And the first comes from a corner kick where chaos ensued. Zinchenko was caught ball watching a little bit on the right side of the field, but and then Digna was able to get across, just firing it across the 6 yard box. Partoris also does well to kind of screen Saliba and Rea from being able to get to the ball. And Gabriel Martinelli at this point missed marking Leon Bailey, and Leon Bailey is free at the back post. And Leon Bailey comes back to haunt Arsenal again as he was involved, I believe, in the John McGinn goal back in December. And then a few minutes later, Arsenal have a corner kick themselves, and here Villa defend it. Jorginho, though, is able to get it on the end after the ball's like cleared away, but it's not really cleared away that well. Tielemans actually kind of makes a mess of it. Zinchenko is able to control it, and then he finds Jorginho. And Jorginho, this might have been the point where just to get the kind of the pressure and the moment just got to him, because usually this is one of the more calm heads on the ball on that Arsenal side. And Jorginho actually just tried to do something that was a little too much. And you get it because they're down a goal. They not only have to tie it, they really do have to win it. So they need to score quickly. And Jorginho is trying to thread an impossible ball, maybe to Havertz, who's able to run onto it. I think Havertz is going to be offside anyways. Instead, Tielemans is able to intercept it, and then Tielemans sees Ollie Watkins' goal side of Smith Rowe, and this is off a corner. This is coming off a corner kick as well, and so that's the reason why it was only Smith Rowe back there. Arsenal had all their towers, Saliba and Gabriel, in the box because Arsenal had just done a corner kick and they weren't able to get the numbers back in time. And Ollie Watkins does what he's been doing all year. Really, he does very well to go all the way down. He's able to draw Raya to maybe go down and show his cards a little early, and then he's able to flick it before Smith Rowe is able to get back just in time. I think Smith Rowe even gets a little touch on it that even makes it even worse, or makes it easier for it to just fly over Raya. And it was a special moment for Ollie Watkins, richly deserved as well, who was spectacular again in this game. Probably could have scored earlier in the game, and so that's the title race. So how's the top four going? And well, we know what Villa did. But on Saturday, there was another team, vying for that spot with a chance to maybe put a little pressure on them as well, just like Man City did the day before, where Tottenham had a chance to kind of do the same thing, but they were going to a place, the Newcastle ground, where they have not had much success recently. I believe it was only a year ago where they actually lost this game 6-1. So they're only losing 4-0. I guess they improved a little bit on that, but I mentioned how Van Dijk slipped on a banana peel. So did Van de Ven. Van de Ven basically became a meme after this game, really not enjoying facing Alexander Isak. And but another thing that was kind of weird is it was only back in December where Spurs won this 4-1. So this game this fixture list has a lot of goals, but it has a lot of lopsided contests recently. But yeah, Alexander Isak was just too much for the Spurs backline to overcome. Newcastle were really good at creating turnovers and breaking quickly. Gordon then was able to fire a second, helping benefiting from a bit of a mistake from Pedro Porro. In the wounds just got even worse for Tottenham as Pedro Porro had to go off in the second half for a hamstring injury, and and then Ishak was able to get the third, and similar to the Ollie Watkins goal, where they were able to get basically Ishak completely behind everyone else. But because Bruno plays the ball while Ishak is in his own his own area, his own half of the field, he can't be offsides, and then he does well to finish. And I'll get to him. Ishak is up there as making a case for being considered elite in all of Europe as far as just being a number nine that can just do it all. And then Fabian Schär was able to get a fourth after on a corner kick. And so that's kind of how the top four went. Really good week for Aston Villa, to say the least. They basically took back control a little bit of their fate, but they still have. I mean, Spurs do as well. But Villa and Tottenham still have to play the big boys. Still have to play Liverpool and Man City. And we'll see. Or Villa don't have to do that anymore. But Villa still have Liverpool and Spurs still have Arsenal and Man City and Liverpool to play. So really, really good week for Aston Villa and Unai Emery. And then that's kind of where all the important stuff is. But how is the most talked about bad club doing on the weekend? So how would Man United follow up their performance, giving up 28 shots to Liverpool on their goal, and basically where a draw was something that everyone praised them for, and how would they perform versus lowly Bournemouth, who all they did was beat them 3-0 at Old Trafford back in December, and basically went about as well as you would probably predict if you had been paying attention at all this season. Just another horrid start where Bournemouth easily could have been up, scored forward 4 or 5, but it was only 2-1 at halftime. But really nice goals. First one with by Solanke, who is having a spectacular season in his own right. I think he's maybe top five. Uh, the goal scored, and then a second with Kluivert. And Den Hag did make some changes in the second half. Took off Garnacho, brought on Amad Diallo, who we haven't seen since he won the game versus or knocked Liverpool out of the FA Cup a month ago. But unfortunately for him, he really wasn't that impactful. But it looks like Ten Hag just put the whole blame on the first half on Garnacho, and I thought you could have blamed it on really any of their attacking players. So I didn't necessarily like that because it sent a message, and then Ten Hag kind of doubled down in the post game, just called out Garnacho by name, and yeah, Garnacho wasn't doing well to run back, and too often Dallo was forced into too many 2v1s where he didn't know who to mark, who to cover. Kambwala was also the youngster was also sometimes isolated because Dallo was sometimes out of position, and it was symbolic again by Man United. But that's just kind of how they've been, and we'll get to them. And then it ends up being a very weird 2-2 kind of game because they get a PK I didn't think they deserved. I think Kobe Maino's just going for a shot, and it's first deflected, and then the deflection hits off Adam Smith's arm. I don't think Adam Smith has any time to react. Maybe he moves it a little bit, but again, I just thought that was really harsh. And then at the very end, it looked like maybe Bournemouth had gotten a PK of their own. Looks like the defender is standing on the line. If not, it's hard to see to the naked eye where the contact first happens or not, or where the foul first happens or not. Whether it's just outside, onside. If it's standing on the line, that's considered in the box. And the thing that was interesting to me is the VAR people looked at it and they actually overruled the on field decision. I didn't think there was enough to do that. So a little unlucky for Bournemouth, where I thought they richly deserved it. All this talk afterwards was, oh man, Man United are unlucky to only come away with a point. I think the opposite. I think they were lucky to not actually suffer another heavy defeat. But I'll get to them later on. And then in the relegation race, what happened? Well, Brentford came in needing a win over Sheffield, and they got it. With a little fortune on the goal. Damsgaard had a cross that deflected in. Not a lot happened as far as chances came. It was relatively fairly competitive between both sides, but Brentford were able to get the breakaway. It was a nice little counter move by Brentford. Damsgaard actually starts it. He first receives the ball, I believe, from one of the defenders, and then he plays it to Embremo, and then Embremo does really well to kind of drag the fullback out of position, and then Embremo kind of plays a return ball to Damsgaard, continuing his run, and then Damsgaard continues to move all the way down the field. He enters the penalty area, and then he has a little cross into the box, and the cross. Gets a little deflection to wrong foot the keeper, but it's probably what Brentford deserved on the play. It was a little unlucky that it came to Oliver Arblaster on getting the final touch for the own goal, because when I get to this game, I'll speak about him a little bit as well, because I feel like one of the reasons why Sheffield's fortunes have changed a little bit for the better, at least as far as being a little bit more competitive. I think it's been his insertion into the starting 11, and it's kind of unfortunate that he gets a little responsibility for his side going down. And then it took a while for the second one to come from it. We thought actually it was from Damsgaard as well, with a wonderful volley, but that was kind of taken out. VAR kind of overruled it for a late foul, judged on Collins, and but they were able to get the second at the very end. It came from off a throw in, and a couple people that were just subbed on played a role. Kevin Shota has been an attacking player that they have missed all season. Brentford have had all these injuries, and it's easy to forget about him, who is also a youngster. They could have used him, while they were missing Ivan Toney, but he's been out for really most of the season, if not 90% of it. But they finally got him back, and he had a little flick to after the throw in that I was able to playing a teammate in the box, and then Onyeka was able to finish in the box. And they got Brentford get a much needed important 3 points, and they still have a run of fixtures that is favorable. But I think they have like a 7 or 6 point lead now over the bottom, but they play Luton now head to head, so it's still important for them to win the next game, and it is crossing for Sheffield, who have started to play some decent stuff lately, and it is unfortunate for the kid. Harmer was asking questions. McBurnley and Brenton Diaz, since they've been played together, Sheffield at least look competitive now. But the problem is it's not enough to be competitive. They have to basically win all out, and they're probably not going to do that. So little too late, too little too late. Likewise, it possibly is too little too late for Burnley. Burnley played Brighton, and again, Burnley played a competitive game. Before what happened versus Everton, I think they were on a stretch of unbeaten through 4 games, but they were all draws essentially. Well, maybe they beat Brentford here and there, but they've been throwing away some points. Unfortunate for them, and they do it again here. They did it versus Everton. Basically gifted a goal by the keeper. Not really. Just took too long, and Calvert Lewin was able to run up to him, pressure him a little bit, and as Muric was able to clear it last week, it deflected off Calvert Lewin to go in. And funny enough, that's actually how they got their goal this game. Uh, Almost the exact same. Here I believe it's Carlos Baliba. Is sliding to the ground, trying to get the ball to go back to the keeper, but it kind of bobbles a little bit. It's not able to get them. Fabregas has to go down to try to get it, and basically his slide tackle goes off. I believe it's Brownhill charging in. So Burnley were leading in the game. It looks like they relatively had things set to maybe see it out and get a much needed 3 points, and instead. Just a few minutes later, they're just passing from the back. Sandberger plays the ball backwards. It looks fairly harmless. I mean, it is raining like quite hard at this point. I mean, conditions were absolutely miserable. It's worth saying that as well, but I can't. It's hard to make enough excuses because Muric just lets the ball slip under him to go in a massive howler to back-to-back weeks where he has a howler. And it's fortunate as well because you actually look at how he's played outside of those errors. He's played quite well. He was man of the match, I think, versus Brentford. And maybe his first game, being the starter. And it's company made the decision to stop playing Trafford to go to Muric and maybe it helped them versus Brentford, but he's cost his side some points and much needed points. It's crazy to say, but if you just do the minimum and say the Calvert Lewin goal doesn't happen, and so you get a point there, and maybe you somehow see this game out, that's 4 points. You would have been only, I think, and you have, I think, Sheffield playing head to head coming up. You possibly wouldn't have been able to catch Luton Town, or Burnley would have. But now I think they're 6 points off, but they still have that big game for Sheffield, where who they beat, I think 5-0, in the earlier game. Now, different Sheffield then, but different Burnley as well. So, maybe Burnley still have a chance. They are playing better. It is worth saying that all 3 teams or it started with Luton. Luton have kind of, if they actually don't stay up, it's possibly going to be the injury crisis that's kind of be their own down doing. It did not help with their goal differential as well. It possibly could come down to that as well. But all 3 promoted sides, who everyone kind of left for dead, took forever for them to actually get some wins. I think we went into November without any of them actually getting a win. They are all 3 of them are starting to play pretty competitive football, regardless of who they're playing. It's just probably a little too late. One of those teams that's also kind of in this muck is Nottingham Forest, and they're in this muck because of some financial fair play issues and some allegations against them, and they were deducted points. And here, so they only have maybe a 2 or 3 point lead over Luton Town. So they need to get some points as well, and they were able to get at least a point versus Wolves. It possibly could have been a little bit more. Played an exciting 2-2 draw with Wolves. Gio Reyna got the start and an assist. So that was good for us. The assist just came from a corner kick. It was well placed, but it was really more a little bit about what Morgan Gibbs White did there. But Gio Reyna played well. He lost some duels. Fair enough. But I thought he played a really nice pass into Nico Williams. He could have maybe done better. There was a moment where early in the game he had a shot, he just kind of screamed the post a little bit. So I thought he played well, and unfortunately for him, he was taken off for Divock Origi, and Divock Origi had a chance to maybe win the game and kind of blew it. So Reina was giving a shot to play a little more advanced, and it wasn't terrible. So hopefully, maybe we see that again. Also, not having Anthony Alenga, that was kind of the reason why Reina was giving a little more of a cushion to play. But uh, I not to say it as an American, but I feel like he earned a little bit more playing time, whether from the bench or starting, but at least more than just five or so minute cameos. Come on, Nino. But that said, Forest are in a bit of a muck themselves. They need to start getting some wins. Not, they're playing well, but they need to get some wins. And it was a 2-2 draw because Wolves got Mateus Cunha back, essentially. And man, did we see what they've been missing? He scored a beautiful individual goal, probably goal of the weekend. Where and then the second one was a bit more scrappy after a bit of a set piece. And that's another thing with Nottingham Forest; they can't seem to defend set pieces or corner kicks. And then out of the other action, Fulham went on to beat Wolverhampton 2-1. With Andres Pereira with a brace. West Ham a couple games now in a row without Jared Bowen, and they do not really look that competitive without Jared Bowen. And then in yesterday's action, Chelsea basically told Everton to not think about getting points versus them. But it was a very weird game because Beto probably had 3 or 4 chances to maybe have a hat trick themselves. Now they were more than less half chances, but Chelsea were not necessarily as this was not a 6-0 kind of game, but Cole Palmer is the headliner. He's able to get 4 goals. His fourth one comes from a PK, but 3 in open play and really nice goals. Pickford had a horrid game, unfortunately for him, capped off with I believe the third goal where he basically just passes it to Cole Palmer and then Cole Palmer chips him from about 35 yards out. And Pickford has started to really struggle, and that's not really great news for England because Pickford had a terrible pass, maybe from a goal kick, I believe, versus Belgium, in the last time that England had a friendly fixture list. So not great news for Pickford. Not great news for Everton because you look at that side, you don't know where they can go for goals, and then the other side of it is, at least in this game, it was it was Ashley Young. It kind of played in midfield, and then the other side on the right side was Seamus Coleman. And neither can really run at this point. I don't really understand why you wouldn't have just have Ashley Young kind of being your right back and maybe play someone like a Josh Harrison or someone else, maybe a Garner, to offer a little bit better protection. Instead, it was this, and Seamus Coleman just got worked time after time after time, either by Mudryk or even Mark Cucurella, where 3 or 4 of these goals came from that side. So not really great for Everton. Not great for Dyche. I think Everton were also recently deduct more points, and when I get to them, they're deducted points for illegally spending. And you look at that squad, it makes no sense to me. So I don't really get how they've necessarily done that. So b- you look at that squad, someone that has at least spent overspent some money. You would at least be able to point to someone. Maybe there'd be an injury. Maybe like a star player got hurt. There's just no one really on that bench that just offers you security. It's not just the 11, just the bench seems very lax for options either. And it's what's kind of crazy. It wasn't that long ago. I think it was back in December when Everton actually beat Chelsea back at their home ground. So That just shows how much has changed since then. Maybe Cole Palmer wasn't necessarily established as this kind of this kind of finisher at that point, or maybe not established as far as part of the 11. But man, this did not look good. But that's kind of leading off where we are, or where the week went, and I will get started with Liverpool and Crystal Palace. And like I said, Liverpool do go on to lose uh, 1-0 to Abiche Eze, getting the final goal to go in, but it was a really well worked team goal. But before that, Liverpool had a brutal midweek as well. They lost 3-0 at Anfield. Possibly could have ended 3-3 or 3-2. And it's very similar story of just lots of missed chances. Jota even came on, was able to get a cameo, and he missed maybe two sitters on a couple crosses that usually he does better with. The only maybe positive was Cody Gakpo. Got a start and played quite well. I was actually surprised we didn't even see him get a start in this game. And then Trent was back on the bench, and we were able to see Trent in the second half of the Liverpool game. So that was at least the copium for to stay positive. But other than that, this is starting to look a little bleak. And then with Crystal Palace, who did not look really competitive versus Man City, they were at least able to get Elise and Eze back, which is not that's not insignificant. But also, this was a difficult fixture back in December that needed Harviella to not only score from outside the box to win that game for Liverpool, but needed an Andre Ayew red card to at least get back and get back some control in the game. So Palace are giving them fits. That might have been Roy Hodgson's Palace. I can't remember, but this is kind of where we are. And another thing too is it was a makeshift back line. I looked at the starting 11 for Palace, and I was like, well, Lerma is a midfielder. Nathaniel Klein used to be a fullback, uh, but that was kind of it. Adam Wharton has been an up and comer. He's been impressive in the few games that he's been given a chance to shine it. I thought he actually was one of the few that played pretty well uh, versus Man City last week. Mitchell and Munoz are really good at being wingbacks. So it seems it suits them better than necessarily being fullbacks. And then Elise and Eze just kind of were giving a little free roll to occupy any open half spaces. And man, did they play well. And then Mateta was a handle as well. And so it was a massive 3 points for Palace as well. They were kind of close in that and kind of scrum, and I believe that win took them over Brentford in the table. So Palace have to really like where they're at. And then with Liverpool's starting 11, I'm gonna be honest. When I saw it, I did not like it. I didn't understand. You figured Palace were going to be somewhat, playing in a shell, and I didn't really like the idea of. I didn't like the front three of Salah, Nunez, and Diaz because it's basically what we've been seeing for the last month, and that's kind of the reason why they're not putting away chances. They don't really have goal scorers there. Salah is not the Salah that you would recognize. Salah isn't to me. He isn't fully fit from the hamstring injury. Uh, and since he's returned, Liverpool really have not played well. That so you can't just look at the name. It's the form that the player is in as well. If Salah was back to where he was, back in December, November, this wouldn't have not this would not have been an issue. Versus Man United, it wouldn't have been an issue. Probably versus Man City, it wouldn't have been an issue. But he's not the same player since his post hamstring injury. And then the midfield of Endo, McAllister, and Jones. I didn't like Sloboslai being benched. I mentioned that last week. Jones probably would, once he got healthy, would probably get back into the 11 because Klopp likes what he offers without the ball. But you looked at that, and really the only kind of goal threat is McAllister. And when you look at that, you also don't really love the idea of McAllister having to track back and be a defensive kind of cover if Bradley goes up and plays as high as he normally does. And we saw that really, kind of backfire for the goal, where someone like a Sloboshai does much better job of recovering. And people maybe don't like what Sloboshai has offered this season. And he had a poor back pass. He probably got benched because of the poor back pass that led to the third goal versus Atalanta. and maybe Szoboszlai was tired, but he was able to come on in the second half, and Liverpool played better in the second half. But and Endo's probably maybe get been overplayed a little bit as well. But you just looked, and everything was just very stagnant. There was no creation in that first half, and everything really did switch off in the second half, where it felt Liverpool were unlucky not to win again. But that was a problem, and we saw that for the goal, which I'll probably get to later on. But another thing, Liverpool started off sloppy, and yeah, Allison back in goal, but a bit rusty in his feet. That was another thing as well. No Keller, and Keller did not have his best game versus Atalanta. That was part of the reason why they conceded a couple goals too. There was an early chance where Robinson had a terrific run. After Allison kind of threw it to him, finds Diaz. Diaz has a return ball back. Robinson then plays Nunez out wide. Nunez has options. He decides to basically go for the spectacular curler. Uh, and then just Henderson was able to catch it. The only reason to kind of highlight this is it was maybe Robinson's best game in some time, and it's basically a shame that they erased that. A lot of the really best moments that Liverpool had in the first half was Robinson doing well to make some runs down the wing and to get some delivery into the box, but he also had a great defensive game as well, which we'll get to. But we'll get to the first goal. And a fair play to Palace because it was a very lovely, lovely worked goal. This is not something you see from someone from a team that is fighting relegation. To be honest, this is something that you would maybe praise someone like Brighton for. So here it starts with Anderson taking a little gamble. Anderson, the third, the central center back. He takes a little dribble to get past Nunez, and Anderson is creeping up, high in Liverpool area. And then he finds Tyreek Mitchell all the way out wide. He's doing very well to stay as wide as possible, to be an outlet on the left touchline. So Bradley is now forced to cover two guys, basically. And Liverpool can't shift over quickly enough. Palace's Mitchell, Eze, Lerma, and Adam Wharton then kind of force a nice little rectangle, just, passing off each other. Lovely one-touch passing that Liverpool just are always late to recognize. Mitchell then makes a run unnoticed. Endo is too late to close him down. Mitchell then has Eze wide open in the box for an easy putback. Liverpool, though, get caught chasing the ball here, not recognizing where each Palace person was. Curtis Jones just left everyone to just start chasing the ball like his head was cut off. And then Endo left Eze to go close down on Mitchell. So no one was able to shift over and recognize and pick up the wide open guy 5 yards from Allison. And just a really good example of just, simply keeping the ball and keeping it moving. Not just keeping it moving. Can confuse and bait a defense out. And I mean, Wharton also has a very nice pass that really just kind of draws Bradley off Mitchell to run at Elise, and then he's just too late there, and that as Elise is able to play in Mitchell, and just that's kind of another thing too. I've seen people talk about. I think it's Jamie Carragher who has talked about Liverpool need to be a little more careful, maybe slow down in the final third. I don't necessarily agree. I think too often they're too slow, and because here Palace get the goal because they keep the ball moving. The ball moves faster than how you can shift over. If Palace get the ball, if say Olise or Adam Wharton get the ball and they kind of close down to kind of see their options, Liverpool able to recognize Eze's open and then get a marker on him really quickly. Instead, they just kept it going, and it was a very well worked goal and well deserved goal because they got another chance after shortly after where if not for Robinson, Van Dijk becomes an internet fatality kind of meme forever linked to Steven Gerrard. So Palace get Eze the ball. He tries to play in Mateta running behind. It looks like the possession's lost. Van Dijk's right there. It shouldn't be really a problem, but he slips. And all hell breaks loose. Mateta is able to get on the ball. He's able to get flick it past Allison, and Robinson just is there to sprint back and dive and keeps the ball just barely from crossing over the line. And then Liverpool did have a couple chances. Endo strikes the bar, first of many this game. After Robinson had a nice little run to draw a corner kick, Palace can't clear the ball first, and then there's a little scrum, and Endo's able to get onto the ball, catches it too well though, and just banks off the crossbar. And then there was another chance where Robinson on the wing again, cross finds Diaz, stretched, and Diaz does well to get this on goal, and it's just saved by Henderson. Really only a half chance though, still a chance, but all the action was coming down Robinson's side, and with Robinson's delivery. And then there was a chance for Crystal Palace, couple chances here late. Better decision making. They probably score here as well. Wharton finds Elise, who finds Eze, and his first touch just lets him down in the box. Palace were in the box with a chance to maybe pose some danger again. And then Kanate lost the ball in maybe the worst place possible, middle middle of the field, basically near the halfway line. Eze finds Elise again, making a run up the right side. Eze has Mateta for a square ball, but can't get it off in time because Robinson is able to sprint back and force Elise to at least cut it back, and that allows Van Dijk to run and recover and block it. But close call again, and then. Right around the halftime, Mitchell had a late cross that found Mateta, but Mateta couldn't get the header on target. But it really was a disastrous first half from Liverpool, but really good by Palace. So two ways to look at it. But it was not like the Man United game. They did not have the number of high flying chances that they blew away, and frankly, they created very little of that half, and were lucky that they weren't down even more. And Palace's their shape was perfect. Their wing backs were keeping width. So anytime that Liverpool maybe lost the ball, maybe Bradley was too high up because Liverpool were playing with both whole fullbacks, very very bombing forward, very attack minded. So the cover on that side was Alexis McAllister. Or Salah, and Salah wasn't really doing it. McAllister just didn't have the legs and engine room to get back either. And Bradley was sometimes getting caught out of position too, and it was just too many players for Liverpool to mark on that side, and those Palace players were really good at finding where the space was and being able to quickly get it and turn and to go upfield with it. So yeah, it was just happening time and time again, whether it was Eze or Elise, or even Mitchell. It was not good. So I thought it was a mistake not having Slabberschlei out there to offer some better energy on that right side. And again, frankly, if it wasn't for opposite, it would have been worse. But some changes happened in the second half. So first one came, it was Indo off for Slabberschlei, McAllister back in the sixth. So I thought that made a little bit more sense. And then Bradley hurt himself basically a minute into the second half, so that forced another change to happen. Where Trent had to come on, but it was nearly a blessing in disguise because Liverpool were much better team in the second half, and it was really because of Trent's forward vision that's severely been lacking in the first half. Really been lacking for a while. Bradley, I like him. Bradley is good defensively. He's a bombing forward, kind of traditional minded fullback, but he's not the best necessarily when it comes to picking a pass or when it comes to kind of build up. But you can't really go at him. He is 19 years old. He's playing in more games than he would have expected. But it's different, especially when you're getting coming down to these kind of tight windows. You need someone a little bit better on the ball, and that is what Alexander Arnold offers. It actually works out too because Bradley looks like he hurt himself where he's going to be out probably for the end of the month. Uh, and that's not positive going forward because Gomez was played at right back versus Atalanta, and that did not go well. So Bradley probably is the second best right back in the squad, and you're not going to have him, and you don't really know if Trent Alexander what his fitness is, if he's able to go full time versus Atalanta or full time in the EPL games, and not just at Liverpool have the game versus Atalanta in this coming this coming Thursday, and then they turn around and they play like 3 or 4 games within a very short window, and it's three away games in the EPL or in the Premier League. So this is not coming at the best time, but we'll have to see. But going back to the chances. So first one is Salah has a cross, defended well, but stops Curtis getting maybe a final touch into the box, but better passing here. Kanate fires a through ball to through Adam Wharton and Rick Hughes to find Curtis Jones. Finding a little pocket that was a little unmarked, and then Liverpool moving it to find Nunez, and Nunez back heels it to Salah. Salah has a cross, nearly comes off, and then they get a corner kick, and they this a little part of me maybe died inside because Nunez from point blank just gets on a free ball and has all the contact you want. He strikes it pure. It's not like he blew it over the net. He at least got it on goal. So you can say that, but it's just he's 4 yards out. You need to be able to pick a corner. He just hits it right at the goalie instead, and unfortunately, it hits like the middle of the knee. Not even if it hits the top of the knee, it probably still goes in. It was just one of those games, and then Klopp made some changes after that. Nunez off, Diaz off, Gakpo and Jota on. I understood it, but the only thing I didn't like is it could have been a chance to keep Nunez on. Liverpool had a lot more of the ball in the second half. Trent had a lot more better delivery. It felt like Slabberschlei was coming in. He had some better crosses in the second half as well. There was chaos in the box in some of these. And Nunez kind of thrives a little bit on that, as we saw versus Nottingham Forest. And I thought it was a bit of a mistake for Klopp not to maybe take off a midfielder and to just kind of go home with four attackers, and we didn't necessarily see that, and that ended up backfiring a little bit because one of the best chances in the second half came to Curtis Jones, who's not really known for his goal scoring, and that ended up backfiring a little bit. Gakpo, I like Gakpo and Jota coming on for obvious reasons for Jota, but Gakpo was maybe their best player who deserves some praise after the Atalanta game, and I thought it was a bit surprising that we didn't see him start over Luis Diaz. And again, Luis Diaz is one of those players that he can get you a lot of creation, but he's not necessarily going to lead to goals himself. He had that great acrobatic effort in the first half, but that was really it. And Gakpo came on, and he was much better as well. Gakpo had some really nice delivery that led to a little of that chaos as well. And I just don't get why Klopp doesn't play Gakpo and Nunez together. That really does kind of boggle my mind a little bit. But it's just these kind of games when you have full control of the ball. I would like Klopp to be a little bit more aggressive and find a way to play with four attackers, sacrificing a midfield. You can easily fit on Salah, Jota, Gakpo, and Nunez together at the same time, and we just haven't seen it. And then a couple chances as well. First one, Salah and Szoboszlai connect, forces Anderson to block it for a corner kick. Better here, but midfield runner into the box from Szoboszlai, and then the big chance happens, and this is where he just figured it was going to be one of those days. Jota misses from point blank, so you can't just go with Nunez. Jota misses well. Well worked move. Kanate again fires a positive ball to pick out Jones unmarked. Palace through the Palace midfield line. Kanate is enjoying this because Trent is basically baiting players to run at him. Trent's drawing all this attention, and that's kind of opening up a little gap for Kanate to play more forward balls, basically. And Curtis Jones is recognizing that and is able to find a little pocket, turn, and then from there, let's see. Jones plays it to Szoboszlai, who returns it to Jones, and then Szoboszlai continues his run. Uh, Jones then plays in Szoboszlai, or maybe even Palace get a little I think it's Will Hughes actually kicks the ball off Jones, but the ball finds Szoboszlai, and instead of trying to go for goal himself, he goes for the square ball. He thinks it's the easier option, and Jota has a tap in, and it's just Nathaniel Klein, the former Liverpool player, during the Rodgers errors, or maybe even he's the player that lost his starting spot to 17 or 18-year-old Trent Alexander-Arnold, is there to get the key block, and it was just when that happened, I really was kind of freaking out. And then even after that, Palace had a chance to kind of do the same, where Mateta, possibly should have scored, his goal. So just a lone kind of Palace chance in the second half where it's just free kick sent in. Liverpool can't deal with it from Mateta's goal side of Kanate, and then he gets a good foot on it. And it's just Allison's able to get a glove to kind of stop this from going in somehow. And then so Palace get a corner kick, and Liverpool basically break on that corner kick. And so in past years, this I think gets converted. Salah does enough to put Lerma off. The ball bounces, find Gakpo running onto it. Liverpool basically have the situation that they've had versus Man City, they've had versus Man United, they had versus Arsenal, where they have numbers in their advantage with they have this breakaway going on. Gakpo is able to play in Curtis Jones. Curtis Jones is goal side of Adam Wharton, and Wharton does enough to at least sprint back to put a little pressure on Curtis Jones, but still he's got to bury this, or at minimum make the keeper save it, make the keeper have a spill of it, because you have all those numbers. Maybe Salah's there to get a rebound. Uh, Gakpo is running, Jota is running as well, and it's just it went to the wrong player. And I like Curtis Jones. I like him for this genie role that Klopp uses him. When you need him to press, he's amazing when it comes to doing that. Maybe too good at doing that, as we saw. Maybe not necessarily the best positional discipline. And he's good when it comes to retaining possession when people are actually pressing him. But in games you need goals. I don't want to say he's useless, but it's I would prefer someone that at least scores goals in that situation. Unfortunately, and then there was a chance where Salah was denied, and really good ball sent in by Gakpo. Jota gets a touch first, ball finds Salah, and again Palace are just there to get the late block. Liverpool allowing Palace to get the first goal was a nightmare, but the opportunities were there to score multiple goals in the second half, and again they just didn't take them. And one thing I will say is I did like Salah being closer to the box more in the second half. That's been a thing that's been bugging me too. Salah it doesn't have necessarily the massive pace that he had just back in November, and I do think he hasn't fully recovered from the hamstring injury. Hopefully, he's not necessarily playing through pain, but he's still trying to he still thinks he's the player that he once was. I don't necessarily want to say that derogatorily. I think he can still get back to where he was, pre injury. But it's just now he's not where he was, and he's still trying to get the ball on the touchline, and then he's trying to take players on, and he can't do it. He doesn't have the pace to get by people, and it's actually hurting the team. So I like someone else being that outlet, whether it's Elliott, whether it's Sloboshlai, or whether it's Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I like Salah being forced, to be someone to get touches in the box and become a bit more of a poacher, because right now that's what's needed. Jota's a poacher, that's why I like him because Nunez isn't able to offer that. But I'll get to Nunez. I still think there's a way for him to help now that Trent Alexander-Arnold is back. But the first time take was Cope, but this was disastrous, and it's a similar story, just same week to week now. Also, coming off that Atalanta performance, you would have assumed maybe there would be a response, but the opposite happened, and they just kind of went into a shell again. And I don't think Klopp is fully blameless here, though. I did love the starting 11, didn't really love the second half subs, and I'm not even saying Liverpool should have won the game. A 2-2, I think, would have reflected the score as well. But it's just to not score was rough. I mean, 21 shots, four big chances again, four missed. 21 shots, six on target. Palace with 8 and 5, Liverpool 2.8 XG, Palace with 1.9, uh, 70% possession. Improved a little bit in the second half, where it was 89 or 70. Yeah, it was 79, so 80%. 11 corner kicks. Now, Palace was sitting off as well. Another thing that happened in Liverpool's favor was Eze and Olise were not able to play the full game, and once those players were taken off, Palace just had no way to keep the ball. And Yeah, it was a missed opportunity, most definitely, especially after you saw how City were able to handle Palace in the second half. Just Liverpool had the opportunity to do the same, and they just City have Kevin De Bruyne, and Liverpool don't. So crushing story again, and also symmetry as well with Palace because especially in title run-ins. In 2013, I believe Liverpool had a 3-0 win or a 3-0 lead over Palace, and gave it away in the second half to draw that game 3-3, and that was after the Gerrard slip game, and that along with the Chelsea game basically threw the title away to City. But the Arsenal result does leave a little light, not much. Liverpool had a chance to kind of control their fate slightly. Now, not or at least control their fate, with goal differential. Now they don't, or at least control their fate if had they made up goal differential. Basically, had they won their games, they would have been even on points with Arsenal, I guess I could say. And then with Arsenal losing, they actually would have even been in an even better position. And now Man City are in that position. So we'll see how this goes. I've been here before. I've seen Liverpool just slightly lose out to Man City on a couple of points here and there. So we'll see if it happens again. But yeah, Klopp got it wrong. The three midfielders, the three choices of midfield. If not for Trent coming in, I don't even think they get nearly those chances. So him back is massive. Another thing too is so many players are looking for Salah to kind of be the outlet, and Salah doesn't look fully recovered. No one's really looking to play Nunez, and Trent will. There's been a lot of symmetry that's been missed with Trent being out. Now everyone goes at him for not being the best defensively. I've done it too, but you see what they've been missing. There was a game, the last game that he played in was Arsenal in the FA Cup, where Trent was world 11 good, and it's just you quickly forget just how good and talented he is. He'll just pick a pass that just no one else can see. He can find feet, whether it's far upfield, to see someone making a run behind a stretch back line, or even when things are really closed in and chaotic. He can be Kevin De Bruyne in those situations as well. Having him back is massive, and it just is he fully back, or has he come back too soon? We'll have to see. Touched on silence and stuff as well. Kind of mentioned that as well, and then just really all the first half tactics all the tactics from the first half need to go in the trash bin. I don't think Diaz offers you a goal threat. I would like to see Gakpo played over Diaz starting now. We'll see if that happens or not. And just yeah, rotten feeling, especially 1 week after Man City just kind of made lunch made a little bit at the same Palace side, but said you have Kevin De Bruyne, Liverpool don't, and just Klopp's never really had that kind of player, and instead his key guys once again just let him down. Salah doesn't look fit, so I'm not gonna fully go against him unless Salah makes us think about maybe being subbed more. because he's done that sometimes too. And if he's not going to necessarily perform, he can't do that. Nunez did the same thing though when he was coming off. He gave a little bit of a stink, but if you're not performing well, you can't do that. So, I think just the symmetry of the attack just feels off, and we'll see how they respond to Atalanta on a 3-0 deficit. It's not the end of the world. Atalanta gave that up basically, apparently on the weekend in like 5 minutes. We'll necessarily. I didn't. There was a lot of praise about Atalanta. I didn't think they necessarily played that well. I just thought they took their chances. They had a striker, I believe Scamica, that actually showed what can happen when you get a striker the ball in the box. So he puts it on net, and maybe the keeper makes a save, maybe he doesn't, and Kelleher wasn't able to make a couple of shots that were actually hit relatively close to him. And then Liverpool gave away the third goal with a really bad decision. But other than that, I didn't really think Atalanta were flying. They were possibly there could have been I think there were a couple other chances I'm maybe forgetting about where Keller did have to make a couple big saves, but I thought Atalanta were gettable defensively as well. Jota came on, he nearly crossed a PK and had a couple headers from point blank that normally he puts on goal at a minimum, and he basically had them out of bounds. So, we'll see what is in store. Maybe it'll be better if they don't have midweek football from this point forward. Maybe they'll be able to focus a little bit more on the league. But I'm starting to get feelings of what happened with Arsenal when they got kicked out of Europe. Everything's just kind of it wasn't a momentum shift to not have Europe to think about. Actually, everything kind of cratered. They also lost Saliba as well. We can't say that, um, but it is funny. One thing I do want to end with is Liverpool have gotten into a weird situation where, as they've gotten bodies back, only now the injury bug from February is starting to show a little bit. Maybe we're seeing remnants of players coming back and just they're still rusty. I think you can say that about Jota as well. Jota in better form probably does finish a couple of chances that he's gotten in the last couple of games. But Jota, I'm going to be patient with Jota. I can't be patient with the others. But I do think Klopp's gotta be more brave going forward, and it's not just, not just, maybe trying more attack-minded ideas. I mentioned, the 4 attackers, but, playing Gakpo maybe more, or if nothing else, let's see what Jaden Dance can do. And, he's 19, 20 years old, scored a beautiful goal versus Man United's 21 U21 side, so he did what, Liverpool couldn't do. No, U21 side, is what it is, but Dan's was able to show he's not afraid of he's got composure when he's got the ball into the box. He showed that for Southampton. I thought he played well versus Chelsea in the FA Cup game when he was thrown on. I thought he played well in the little cameo he had versus Luton Town when he came on even before that. So I don't understand why we haven't seen more Jaden Dance. Hopefully that would actually be maybe something in the cards for Atalanta. We'll see. Maybe if we can get a little of him. Klopp will have to make a decision on who to leave out for the bench. I think you actually get a bigger bench choice in Europe. So we'll see. But I want to see something else. Nunez has time to change my mind. But I have, unfortunately for him, or I shouldn't say that. Unfortunately, I have soured on him. I mean, my opinion doesn't really matter anything, but his shot conversion is so bad. People online don't really like big chances, but he's missing chances that are big chances that he at minimum should. When he's getting the ball, he should at minimum put these on goal. I think I saw he's actually had the most shots of anyone in Europe, and his end product for that isn't what it should be. But that said, Liverpool are getting a lot of these chances because of him as well. Salah doesn't have the legs to necessarily stretch, back lines. He's not making runs in behind. He's become more of a ball to feet kind of player, which that's when I kind of fear the most. Luis Diaz is likewise as well. Nunez is the only one who stretches the pitch. So it's when Gakpo's played in Nunez's stead in the middle, he doesn't do that either. So Nunez needs to play somehow. You just need to find a way to supplement it with a finisher next to him, whether that's Jota, Jack Gakpo, Dan's. That's what Klopp needs to figure out. So we'll see what we're able to do. But Robinson said it right after the game. Boys up front got to deliver. He's right. And another thing too is I low key think the Klopp announcement has become less of a rally cry and more of a distraction now. But still, again, still time to change. It is dying out, but still time for to see a change. And then with Crystal Palace, it's not going to just be all Liverpool. Palace played well. They designed it a nice game plan. Just Bradley and Robinson play with as bombing fullbacks going wide. So you have wing backs where if you get the ball, if there's any kind of turnover, you've got a chance to cause some issues with that wing back shape. Another thing too is even if Robinson and even if the two fullbacks, Robinson and Bradley, are in possession, they've got to mark the wing backs, and so that allows Elise and Eze with a lot of freedom to either run to the ball or be options themselves, and that just it really stretched Liverpool shape a bit, especially with Indo is playing a lot more minutes. Maybe we would have expected. Maybe he doesn't have the legs. Alexis McAllister, I fear, is kind of the same way. And just Liverpool did not have the engine room, other than Curtis Jones, and Curtis Jones was kind of doing too much running, as we saw. It did not work out well. And with Palace, massive win. As a Elise back, again, one of the unique things to say about them as well is sometimes with star players, especially on like the kind of midding teams, mid clubs. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but just kind of lower. I wouldn't say lower tier, just in this kind of range. I guess I'll say. Sometimes you have star players that kind of clash with each other. Both like looking for the ball, both like playing in the same position, and you can't really play with both. And here it's the opposite. They play very well together. They have good symmetry with each other, good chemistry. Uh, it seems like Eze and Elise can play on opposite sides as well. That helps out. And Eze is a little bit more of a creator. Elise can make runs, but also kind of cut inside. I think they work pretty well together. And then Mateta as well can cause a lot of teams problems himself, and just his issue is usually not really being able to see much of the ball. But these are two players that can create a little bit for him, and he gave Kanate a bit of an issue as well as Van Dyke. And then one thing to kind of end off with is Adam Wharton is they signed him in January off Blackpool, a player that I didn't really know about, and he's turned out to be a bit of a gem. And if they stay up, he could be a big reason why. They've had an injury crisis at the back, and they've been forced to move Jefferson Lerma back in from midfield into the back line as a center back. When Adam Wharton and Lerma have played together in midfield, Palace look much different than what we've seen from them recently. So that's something to, at least for the future, something if they can stay up, that'll be someone to keep an eye on, because he showed really good recovery pace to at least give Curtis Jones a little scare. But another thing too is he's got a very good eye for a pass. I'm fairly certain it is Adam Wharton who played the through ball for Mateta when he scored versus Man City. So a good forward minded passer. Well, someone to maybe see going forward, and not just for Palace, maybe for England. Because England don't have a lot of players that can pass through lines. As weird enough to say, they have all these creative attacking players, number tens or wingers, strikers. They have defenders. They have fullbacks. They don't really have that. It's not Declan Rice. People are gonna go at him. It's Ross Barkley. But after that, I kind of when I've been looking at who can potentially make this England team, or who you would like to fit in that kind of midfield kind of pivot little spot, you struggle for options. It's not you don't want Madison to play in that kind of position. You want him further up, or Jude Bellingham, or Foden, or Cole Palmer, Curtis Jones, maybe. But I don't really know if that really works. Curtis Jones, actually, to me, is late and too hesitant to play passes forward like that. So Adam Wharton is going to be someone I think for the future, not just for Palace but also for England. Uh, and yeah, massive 3 points. And another thing with Palace is, uh, if they stay up, do they stick with Oliver Glasnow, and maybe there's no reason not to. He's a Europa winning manager for Frankfurt. Did some really nice things for Frankfurt over the years. I remember before Palace picked him up. Even before one thing over the last few years with Frankfurt, you could always say is they would always have like a just really great front three attacking core where they scored all these goals, and then what would happen is everyone would always take a player off them, take a striker off from them. Did have him last year with Carlo Muani, that ended up leaving for PSG. That move actually hasn't worked out for PSG. Funny enough. But anyways, that's kind of where we are with that game. And then so that's what Liverpool did. So Arsenal would have known about it. How would they respond? And Arsenal do go on to lose 2-0 to Aston Villa. But the goals happened late. Liam Bailey in the 85th minute, Ollie Watkins in the 88th minute, and the great Unai Emery Arsenal showdown. Built up a bit like that. But before I get to that, I will talk about what happened in the midweek fixture because we saw something that maybe Unai Emery noticed and maybe put into his own game plan. So they got off to a flying start. I think one really wonderful goal by Bukayo Saka, and they were dominating that opening 13 minutes. It felt like Bayern were really confused on who to mark, how to handle Ben White playing really high up. He was giving him, Saka, and Odegaard were just giving triangles, and just it seemed Bayern did not really know a way to address that, and they could just get into the game really with a mistake by Gabriel. It's just kind of a clearant ball, and then Gabriel just kind of makes a mess of it. Raya kind of came out a little too far to the ball, and that kind of messed things up as well. And basically. I think it's Sane or someone's able to get onto the loose ball, and I think it's a really nice actually I forget how they get the it's Gnabry. Someone's able to get on the end of it, and Gnabry's able to basically finish, and then the second one it's all Sane, but the second one comes from Noor. It basically looks like Arsenal Havertz is thinks he's got the center back covered, and he's got Noor, kind of blocked off where he's not going to be able to, make this pass. And Noor does a little flick to be able to, to get it to the center back, and then the center back's able to find Sane, and then that's basically where that comes from. So, a couple genius plays, by Noor, and then a couple genius plays by Sane by being able to, get uh, the fullback that was on Sane, who was marking him too tight, to be able to turn and get around him. So. Uh, and then Otada made some changes in that second half. The first, I mentioned it last week, taking off a Kiwar for Zinchenko. I didn't really think that helped out. I've seen that being praised online because it was kind of redundant with Jorginho. And then the second change was taking Jorginho off, moving Rice back to the six, and then bringing on Trossard and Jesus on, keeping Havertz on. And that was really the main thing. They basically had four attackers, and they were able to get a second goal that way. And then Coman struck the post, and then Thomas Partey came on and nearly played Saka in. And I thought Thomas Partey had a good cameo, and then his reward was not getting any minutes for Aston Villa. Uh, but it was a game. It was a very strange game where Arsenal were in a game. Another thing too is it was in a game where Arsenal were not really great at keeping the ball or creating a whole lot in the second half. They were not able to play through lines, and I thought maybe a little bit of mistake. And with Aston Villa, they came off not really in the best taste in their mouth. Losing a 2-goal lead to Brentford. Uh, they were actually even losing 3-2, and then they came back with an Ali Watkins goal at the end. But I thought it looked like Konza was exposed a little bit out wide. Brentford were able to get some crosses past Konza, and then I thought Diego Carlos and Paul Torres had marking issues on crosses. So you're wondering, would that kind of show up a little bit? They had a Conference League midweek as well. I think they won 2-0 over Lille. But it wasn't just Unai Emery returning to the Emirates. It was Emi Martinez as well. And so would that be a storyline? It was. And then another thing too is it was not the strongest side for Aston Villa. No Douglas Luiz for that late yellow card on Brentford. But other than that, it was relatively strong because I looked at what Arteta play or at what Unai Emery played versus Man City just a couple of games ago. It was not this. There was no Paul Torres, there was no Tielemans, there was no uh, Ollie Watkins. There was no. I don't think John McGinn was available. So this was that no Leon Bailey played in that game as well, and so we had Konza, Carlos, Diego Carlos, and Paul Torres, and then Tielemans and McGinn, kind of the two in the middle, and then it was basically Diaby, Morgan Rogers, Digna, and then Watkins and Zaniello. Zaniello was sometimes played next to Watkins or played out basically on the wing option. Maybe it was more Rogers as the second striker. But the interesting thing was to see how Digna was played. Digna was almost like a makeshift winger. The way that they tried to use him, Diaby was kind of in between, and then when Leon Bailey came on, he actually was. So it was almost like the wide players were wingbacks, essentially. But Villa did a very good job to play what they call a mid block. So a kind of a high-ish back line, but then the front line's very compact and closer to the midfield, and then basically they block off the middle third of the pitch. Why they call it, and it man did it really give Arsenal fits, at least in the second half. First half, Arsenal were quite good, so it is worth kind of saying that. But another thing too is you see the three center backs, and they were very good at stretching out, but they were also very good at just being composed on the ball. And Arsenal were trying to, Arsenal were pressing like mad, like they normally do. Like we saw them give City fits where they were pressing in the second half just a couple of weeks ago, and Aston Villa were just quite calm. They always seem to have an extra man, whether it was Tielemans dropping in or Morgan or John McGinn, being an option, or even if it was using Emi Martinez, the goalkeeper, to kind of just be an extra man whenever Arsenal were pressing with Odegaard and Havertz and trying to squeeze. It always seemed like Aston Villa were able to play around it. They were also going long. They're just looking for Zaniello and looking for Diaby or looking for Morgan Rogers sometimes to kind of play some lay some stuff off that was working out as well. And another thing looking at that is John McGinn maybe played his best game, at least in possession, that I think I've ever seen. Playing in that pivot role next to Tielemans, no Douglas Luiz. You didn't know how that was going to work out because neither of those players are really holding traditional kind of uh, defensive-minded midfielders. You wondered maybe that would be a place where maybe Declan Rice could have some success. And the opposite happened a little bit. John McGinn was amazing in a lot of his duels, and I think actually Villa get one of the goals because John McGinn wins the ball off someone to keep a corner kick in play. So we'll get to the first chances though, the first half, because the first half tells a different story than how the game went. So Arsenal were really really good. It took a while for them to get the first chance. I think I have in the 11th minute here. Havertz draws a shot. And it draws a save at least. But Havertz gets the ball, finds Trossard, and then Havertz continues his run. It goes unmarked. John McGinn is caught ball watching here. Trossard plays him in, and Havertz, from the tight angle, gets a shot off, and it is saved. Oh, I didn't mention actually what Arsenal did, because Arsenal lined it up with something a little different as well. So it was White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko getting the start over Kiwar or Tamiyasu. Uh, and then we saw Rice, Odegaard, and Havertz. Havertz was back in the midfield position, and then it was Saka, Jesus, and Trossard. So again, Martinelli was sat, and we saw a little bit why in the second half. But I thought they actually messed that up a little bit. I think what you're missing with Martinelli is you're missing a way to kind of stretch and get the ball in behind with those runs, and you got Aston Villa playing that high line that they always do. Akansa versus Martinelli. I would think Martinelli has the better end of it. And the way that they were using Havertz to try to make some runs from midfield, I think you could have supplemented that with Martinelli as well because Trossard wasn't offering that. I probably would have played Trossard through the middle, to be honest, if you wanted to play Havertz in midfield instead of Jesus, because as we saw again, Jesus didn't really offer much. But other than that, I didn't necessarily think there were too many issues. I thought it was surprising to see Rice back in the number six. That's kind of you play Havertz in this way to kind of be a little more of an attacker to make runs kind of unmarked. But by doing that, you're also you're forcing Havertz to kind of or not forcing you're forcing Rice to be the player on the ball a little bit more to make decisions through when you're up against this quote unquote mid block. And Rice has struggled in those situations. We saw that was it Porto? We saw Porto in the Champions League. We saw it versus Fulham. We saw it, I believe, versus West Ham when that was tried again. It was all the games that before Jorginho was inserted back into the squad. And it happened again. Now, it took a while for it to show up because Arsenal were getting this first half, but it definitely showed up in the second half. And I think the idea was to use Zinchenko to kind of do that instead. And that did work a little bit. Zinchenko was quite good at doing those balls over the top to play in Havertz, making his runs. But on the flip side of that, you're still allowing yourself to be slightly exposed because by having Zinchenko, playing in the midfield, that forces Gabriel to shift over, and you've either got Musa Diaby, and then after Diaby came off, you had Leon Bailey, who was much better. And yeah, it was surprising, honestly, that Arteta didn't actually sub off Zinchenko after Leon Bailey came on. but because that ended up kind of showing up against them. But that's kind of where we are, at least for the starting lineups. So the second chance comes from Sinchenko. Sinchenko over the ball finds Havertz again. So Havertz is already showing he can be influential, from this midfield role, but he can't finish, and that's kind of the issue as well. But the gamble to play Zinchenko at least nearly worked here, and then Aston Villa's kind of first chance. Nothing comes from this. I think it's just Ben White kind of picking up a yellow card. But I want to highlight this because this little interchange of play showed up later in the second half. So really good play here. And so here, Emi Martinez plays a semi-risky ball into a space. No one's even in the area where he plays the ball to. Uh, but Rogers is the first to run onto it. He gets a touch and he finds Zaniolo. Zaniolo does really well here to hold off Ben White, who's receiving the ball, and then he spins around him and he forces Ben White to kind of bring him down, stopping a 3v3 attack with Watkins on the ball. And then the chances did come to Arsenal, really. So Saka here's across to Jesus, who again gets open, but he has a poor header, side of the net, did something similar versus Brighton last week. And then Arsenal have a chance. Saka looked like he was through on goal. Another really great ball by Odegaard. But Saka waits too long. Maybe the angle goes against him, and he tries to take a shot, and he can only hit the side netting. He has to shoot with his weaker right foot as well, so maybe that's probably why he took a little time there. And then there was another chance where Odegaard with a long ball finds Havertz in behind again. This kept happening, and unfortunate for Arsenal, just Havertz wasn't able to make any of it count. So Arsenal had a lot of the ball, but just it was situations like this. So it comes from Odegaard, then dropping to be kind of next to Rice. He receives the ball and then plays a very nice through ball to find Havertz running behind Konza. And Havertz looks in on goal, and just Diego Carlos is able to have a nice low recovery. If this is uh, Gabriel Martinelli, I don't think Diego Carlos, it showed he had some pretty good pace. I don't think Carlos is able to catch him. So, it felt like he Arteta game planned his whole thing around Havertz, making these runs from midfield, and it was effective as far as creating some danger moments, but it didn't really. I'm not going to say it backfired, but it didn't really work out in the end because you didn't get any end product from it. And then we have a couple chances for Aston Villa. So here's Aniela picks out Watkins, really good crossfield ball. Watkins through, but it takes maybe a little too long to get the ball out of his feet. But good early sign for Villa that they can at least counter on Arsenal and kind of pressing them. So here they created this by having Morgan Rogers strapping deep to be an option. He lays it off to Tielemans, who then picks out Zaniolo ahead with a great ball. So again, Zaniolo is a bit of an outlet for them to at least escape some pressure and to start attacks themselves. And then there's a nice little layoff by Rogers here, who scored for them last week. And he looks quite a player for Aston Villa in the future as well. He's like 6'4" as well, moves quite quickly. I think he's only 21 or 22. Uh, and then really the big chance in the first half with Watkins striking the goalpost. So again, Aston Villa are passing it from the back. Paul Torres is just launching it upfield, though. This is one of the few times when Paul Torres wasn't able to pick out someone. Gabriel then gets on it and plays an awful pass that just bounces off Zinchenko's back. Just Arsenal's own doing again. Very similar to what happened versus Bayern Munich. And then Watkins runs to the loose ball, carries it near the box, and tries to pick out the far post. And Raya is beaten, but the post comes to his defense. And it was a weird spin on the ball too. You could have easily seen this bounce off one post, go off the other post, and still go in. Instead, it spun the other way. And then the big chance for Arsenal came to Trossard, and Arteta's moves almost worked out. So here, Odegaard has a shot, it's blocked. Jesus then runs on to the rebound, fires in a cross hard into the 6-yard area. So Jesus makes the right play here. And then Trossard is there to poach, and he gets good contact, and just Emi Martinez is able to react instead of foot down to deny this. It's an unreal save. And again, Unai or Emi Martinez kind of haunts Arsenal fans again, an Arsenal Football Club. Again, former Arsenal player as well. And he had a massive game from recollection back in December. And then I think Saka late had a chance to maybe curl one in. It was half chance, but we have seen Saka score this, but that was just kind of where we were. Arsenal, I think, had 14 shots in that first half, only 3 on target. That was kind of there was always a caveat with their performance in the first half, and a couple moments maybe for Havertz could have done better. But and maybe it's a different game if one of those happened. But they did have a good first half. Villa did not see much of the ball. I think their only real opportunity was a self-inflicted mistake. To be fair, and again, I was surprised a little bit with the lineup. But after the way the first half went, I guess you can say Arteta got it wrong. It showed a little bit in the second half though. And then with Villa, again, it could have been easily been 1-0 up, or it could have been worse. So Villa were not playing well though. Things had to change in the second half, and I think we saw it. But another thing too is with like we saw with Bayern, Villa did not care when Saliba or Gabriel had the ball at their feet. Watkins and Rogers were trying to prevent balls in the middle, whether to Rice, Zinchenko, or even Odegaard when he was standing there. And we saw that much more in the second half as well. So things did change. The first 8 minutes, you actually see it. You see a different approach when Villa have the ball. So they start to basically copy what Bayern Munich managed to do last Tuesday, which is keep the ball. So one of the more interesting things that happened after Arsenal got the second goal uh, last Tuesday, or I guess maybe last Wednesday, was there was like a the away the home stand, the fans were started singing. It was very loud. The atmosphere just really came to life. Arsenal were just running like crazy. It almost felt like the crowd was giving them an extra boost of energy, and Arsenal were trying like hell to get Bayern Munich to turn the ball over. And all Bayern did through that kind of atmosphere was keep the ball for basically the next 6 minutes. Very impressive stuff. And it's only 6 minutes, but 6 minutes of game time with all that pressure, onto you. That's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Arsenal are one of the best, basically pressing teams in all of Europe, especially as well. And we saw Villa kind of copy something similar, where again they're not really creating anything by doing this, but what you're doing is you're denying Arsenal the ball. But it's also just annoying. It gets to the home supporters. It's demoralizing when your team, that's known for being really good at winning the ball back, can't get anywhere near it. So it's almost like Unai Emery said, "Hey, they have to go chase you. They have to go get a goal. A draw is not good for them here. So see if you can draw them onto you, and see if you can play around them. Be brave. Be brave as well. When you have to make a passing decision, don't be afraid to play forward. Don't just the side pass might be on, but don't be afraid to look ahead. And we saw that as well. But another thing they did was they had Emi Martinez holding onto the ball way longer to draw Arsenal to push onto them as well. And they always had three center backs spaced out, and so it was just too many for Arsenal to push forward. Arsenal were like pressing with their two, and they like playing their 4-4-2 out of position or out of shape. And whether it was Havertz or whether it was Odegaard or Jesus, whoever it was, it always felt like they were late. They never had enough to cover as many as Villa had options, especially when you included the goalkeeper in that equation, especially when you're not turning it over. And another thing that they were doing is they kept Watkins and Rogers upfield to still be outlets, or Zaniello on the wing to still be outlets. So that was forcing Ben White to at least stay on Zaniello. And they were just better at getting Arsenal to turn it over themselves, and better winning it back. And so just the way the second half went, it was after the first 15 minutes, you started to feel kind of sense something a little bit, and then the sub change happened. So Leon Bailey came on for Moussa Diaby, looking to maybe further exploit Zinchenko in defense. And the chances started to come to Aston Villa. So all this possession, but nothing was really coming from it. And then we start to finally see it uh, pay dividends. So first one is I think it's off a corner kick. Villa maybe it's either defended, or it's kind of just a recycled corner kick. But Tielemans is able to school Zinchenko a little bit in a duel, and then he goes for luck for distance and just is denied by the crossbar and goalpost. Ray is beaten again, but just saved again. And then sub changes for Arsenal happened, and I'll get to there's a little controversy in this as well. So Jesus off, I don't think he should have started. That made sense. White off for Tomiyasu, keeping Zinchenko on. Jorginho came on for Jesus to push Rice further forward. I don't understand why you're playing Zinchenko and Jorginho together. I think that's kind of backfired, which we actually saw. And then the real shock was taking Odegaard off for some smoke. I don't know if Odegaard had a knock or was tired. He kept Saka on. But that did not really work out either. Odegaard is he's their Kevin De Bruyne of the team. He makes stuff happen, and so this happened in I don't know the 80th minute, maybe 78th minute. I thought it was too early to do it, and it's not necessarily why they lost, but I thought it was an interesting move by Arteta. That not one that I would have expected out of all the players to come off. Maybe Havertz, I would not have expected Odegaard to come off unless he was hurt. I haven't, checked uh, any kind of updates. Maybe he was dealing with something. That won't be good for if the situation with Bayern, but we'll have to see. And then we get to the first goal. 84th minute, Leon Bailey, and so Villa get a corner kick. They get it though from passing it between the three center backs high in the Arsenal end. Paul Torres gets on the ball. He does what he's been doing all half. He finds a great forward ball to a teammate, and then Digna gets kind of a forward ball. I think it's Digna that he passes it to. Tries a cross, and then that's blocked by Saka defending the corner kick. So they get a corner kick, and then Villa surprised Arsenal by playing it short. Does come off. Villa are able to recycle it and restart another one. And this is where Arsenal kind of get caught. So Zinchenko has been baited to kind of stay on the right side. He doesn't really have a chance to move over. So it's not really Zinchenko's fault. People are going at Zinchenko, not his fault. Uh, but it does mean the left open is wide open for Leon Bailey. And John McGinn plays a very nice forward ball to find Alex Moreno, who had since come on for Zaniolo. And then he plays a forward ball to find Lucas Digna. And he just says, F it, and crosses it in. And Paul Torres, who stayed upfield, is able to screen Saliba, and he's able to get David Raya to miss it somehow. Raya maybe makes a mistake here, and the ball just goes across the goal, only for Leon Bailey to be at the back post. And for a left-footed player, this isn't the easiest angle to actually score from. I saw Salah, screw this up versus Man United just a week ago. So credit to Leon Bailey there as well to be able to get that finish right. But right before Digna crosses it, you actually see Martinelli give a look around, and sees Leon Bailey and just still leaves him. When Zinchenko's out of the picture and everyone else has a guy, that's Martinelli's man. Leon Bailey has just kind of snuck a little around him, and Martinelli just kind of let it go slide. So unfortunate there. And then Aston Villa were able to get the second one, and Arsenal here have the corner kick first. And Villa defend it, which is not no small feat as well. Arsenal have been the best team this season on set pieces, so not the easiest thing to do. And then it looked like maybe Tielemans maybe messed up by trying to clear it, and basically he just booted it upfield, or just booted it up in the air. Zinchenko was able to control it, and then he passes it to Jorginho. And then again, this is one of the calmest players you would imagine. You figured, hey, just recycle things, go again. But he loses his head, and he tries an impassable pass blocked by Tielemans, and then basically because it's a corner kick, Arsenal's back line, all their center backs, everyone's pushed all the way forward. There's no one back in defense, and Tielemans sees it, and he sees Ollie Watkins is all alone goal side of Smith Rowe inside his own half, and Tielemans plays a good ball forward, and Watkins then is able to carry it upfield and do what Curtis Jones failed to do for her at Liverpool a couple of hours before it. He's able to run to the keeper, gets David Raya to go down, is able to chip him, and what a goal! And from a player that again has had a special season, and it's situations like this where players like this are finally recognized for their special season. When in a big game, big contest like this, when everyone's watching. The caveat to the goal scorer is like, oh, and he's also got 19 goals. He's only one off Holland. Oh, and he's also got more goal involvements than anyone in all of England, uh, anyone in all of the EPL, because he has something like double-digit assists as well. Ollie Watkins has been special, and he's oftentimes he's been leading the attack all on his own. He's not just scoring goals; he's doing a lot of running without the ball. And he's the reason why Villa are in this shape for maybe top four and Champions League against all odds. And I think I've mentioned it before. Players of the season. I've mentioned candidates. Rodri is probably going to be the one that's favorite. I've mentioned Alexis McAllister deserving of a shout. People are going to mention Phil Foden for keeping City off when Kevin De Bruyne has been missing. Watkins at a minimum deserves votes. Whether or not he wins or not, deserves votes. For the final vote tally. And we'll probably get onto that further on. But unfortunately for this, as far as the game goes, what a week it was for Man City. Arsenal were not bad. We're not bad in the first half, but yeah, they were a little rough in the second. Unai Emery, had a really nice game plan, and it kind of foiled them a little bit. And but another thing too is it doesn't matter how well you set up a game plan. In the end, the theme of the weekend, theme of every weekend is can you take your chances when they come or not, or who does take their chances and who doesn't. And basically that was it. Aston Villa only had 2 shots on target, and they scored the 2 goals. Arsenal had 18 shots and only 4 on target. 2 big chances versus Aston Villa's 3. And the possession was about even. It did flip in the second half. Villa had much better job of controlling the ball. I think 53%. And then passes with about similar, 390 for Arsenal, 87%. That's a low passing number there for Arsenal, and you maybe saw why. So I will get started there with Aston Villa. I think Emery saw a little bit what Brighton did the week before and what Bayern were able to do, and they kind of copied it a little bit. So they spread those three center backs out to keep the ball from Arsenal, running at them. And they weren't just passing it, for passing stats. There was a purpose to their decision making. Again, requires being brave on the ball. But another thing too is you've seen keepers now 2 weeks in a row, 2 games in a row. You've seen keepers beat Arsenal's high pressing structure. Whether it's Manuel Neuer last Tuesday, or in this case it was Emi Martinez, who was basically used as a third center back, and he screwed up Arsenal's pressing structure. So what they and another thing they did was they used two men up front, one in front of the other. So what Bayern had Musiala, Villa had Morgan Rogers or Zanello out wide. To always kind of be outlets, forward. They weren't just defending in a giant box where there's just no outlets to advance the ball forward. They always had outlets to always get the ball forward as well. And that was kind of the difference. Another difference between Brighton and maybe even Bayern is unlike a Danny Welbeck or in Bayern's case Harry Kane, Villa have Ollie Watkins. A guy that can always make runs forward. That's always going to keep a defense on their toes. Uh, but the other similarity was Arsenal were beaten by Sane kind of spinning around Kilwar by getting too tight and doing a spin. Villa were doing the same thing with Zinchenko and Ben White in the second half with Leon Bailey and Zaniolo. Uh, doing this without Douglas Luiz and Kamara as well. Just a massive, massive accomplishment. And then to touch on some other players, I mentioned Emre Martinez, the big save on Trossard, that goes in. It's a different story. Villa, if Arsenal get the first goal, Villa have to be the team to press. And this game is entirely different. So getting the first goal, it really is everything. But here I've got Emi Martinez with 65 touches. If- uh, for a keeper, that is high. David Raya is known for being good with his feet, and he had 25. Paul Torres, he's going to be someone that doesn't really come across like doing a whole lot in highlights. But in the second half, he just kept finding that upfield ball to Zanello or Rogers that just took Arsenal players out of the game, and he was a magician in the second half. I put down he's a Man City level of defender with the ball at his feet. Aston Villa found a Chib, a Champions League level of defender, and makes sense. Maybe they're going to get Champions League as well. And it's not a coincidence that Villa's form it kind of started to go backwards a little bit after Paul Torres picked up his injury back in December. His last game before coming back in February might have even been Arsenal. I think he got hurt versus Man United or right around that time. And then Aston Villa's form kind of dipped a little bit. And then Tielemans and John McGinn. It was funny enough is Tielemans long been linked to Arsenal for his time at Leicester, and maybe he could have been gotten at this past summer instead of Villa. And man, did he showcase what he's got. What maybe Arsenal would have gotten had they made the move because he did what Arsenal were not able to do. He was able to pass through lines consistently, and he was always looking to see when the runners were on and timing it. And Arsenal were relying on Odegaard to drop deep next to Rice because Rice can't do that, or they were relying on Zinchenko, and that's kind of the problem. The Rice's when you play Rice in this kind of position to basically be your stopgapper, he's going to see a lot of the ball, and it was because you've got Rice in that situation, you've got Saliba and Gabriel. It's three players that aren't really going to be able to pass through lines, and it shows up. It hurts. So you have to find a way to kind of supplement that, or kind of find a way to get that elsewhere. And unfortunately for Arsenal, I think what that happens is when you're asking Odegaard to drop back and do that role as well, you're missing what he offers you, for more in the final third. And I mentioned John McGinn as well, and he's not to me, he's not always my favorite, but he put on a little bit of a Granit Xhaka like performance, maybe a little of a reminder of what they've been missing with losing Granit Xhaka. All he did was just enjoy a big golden boot after winning the Bundesliga with Bayern Leverkusen this past weekend. But he was just winning every single duel, quietly timed runs upfield that were going a little unmarked. It was hard to kind of always keep up to it. But nothing too is he was just he scored the winner back in December versus Arsenal, playing a different role, a little bit more advanced. And here he had to play a different role here, and he was much better than I would have figured at getting the ball in the turn, showing for it. getting the ball and then making a quick decision. Because I figured when I was looking at that, I was like, John McGinn can sometimes have heavy feet. I guess is probably the easiest way to say it. I figured, you could easily maybe get Declan Rice to get John McGinn trying to do a turn and then lose the ball, and maybe Arsenal were able to break that way. Instead, McGinn was amazing in that kind of role, and he had the final pass that basically led to the first goal, and then Diego Carlos and Konsa. No Clement Langley this game, and I think that kind of shut up. It was a different back line than we saw versus Man City and Erling Haaland, or I guess Phil Foden, because that was the game Phil Foden had the hat trick. But one thing that I mentioned how maybe Konsa doesn't really work best being a fullback. Here he was almost like a third center back. And then another thing too is Carlos has really nice recovery pace that I didn't really know about. If you play Clement Longley instead, I think Havertz is going to be able to get past him, and Havertz probably has a couple easy goals. And then Leon Bailey and Ollie Watkins for the two goals. Already mentioned about Ollie Watkins, but Leon Bailey's having a spectacular all kind of Europe season in his own right. He's up there for double-digit goals and maybe close to double-digit assists for a wide player. That's amazing production. Uh, you also forget that he plays his national team is Jamaica, and uh, there's going to be a lot of talks about what Pulisic's done for Concacaf, but he's maybe Concacaf Player of the Year if people care about that. Leon Bailey has been a star for Aston Villa, and it's fitting he's able to to get that little moment for them as well. And then another thing is what made this really remarkable is they were so poor versus Brentford just a week ago. So they were able to fix it up. So coaching matters, and to touch on that, uh, Aston Villa, Unai Emery deserves his flowers. So Aston Villa were able to pluck away Tielemans, Paul Torres, Kamara without anyone noticing. So they have a good operation, behind the scenes as well. But they also brought in a five-time Europe winning manager who managed PSG at one point as well. And all he's done is make a legitimate case. He's the third best manager in the league. I've said that before, but I haven't, said it with my chest. I'll say it. I'll say it with my chest now. When he's in the top four, it's not even going out it's not really going out on a loop, really. But I really I continue to be flabbergasted. He hasn't even been linked to, say, the Bayern job or even the two giants in Spain, Barca and Madrid, or even a Chelsea or United. So maybe it's good. Villa are enjoying that he's not really linked there, and it was a perfect weekend for them because Tottenham fell a bit on their backside versus Newcastle, and Ollie Watkins again continues his entry for maybe Player of the Season. And the only thing that's annoying is Tielemans, Watkins, Paul Torres, Emi Martinez did not play that game versus Man City because maybe this could have been different. When Villa were fully fit, they had like 20 shots. They blanked Man City when it came to not just goals, they blanked them with shots. Man City maybe didn't even have a shot on goal that whole game. And Holland played that day. Back in December, like this team was flying. Not only flying, this team was only a couple points off City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. Back in December, and then a bit of the injury bug kind of bit them a little bit. So, what a remarkable job that Unai Emery has done, and job's not done. The job's not finished yet. They still have not the easiest fixtures left, but they at least they took back a little control of their fate when it looked like they had maybe lost it. And then we'll get to Arsenal, and I was wondering if maybe the Liverpool result rattled them, but then again, it's not like they played a poor first half. So they did come and done a little bit in the second. So, but another thing too is even before the two goals, they were thinking the post and crossbar. But I do think there is something that Villa exposed, and Bayern did as well. So as good as Saliba and Gabriel have been defensively, I think we saw their. Well, I think I saw like big something like uh, there was a graphic where against them they've only allowed five big chances against them, which for a season is mad. Not five goals, like five quote unquote big chances, however that's calculated or categorized. I mean, defensively they've been absolutely brilliant, and the way they play high line, they play the highest line in Europe. That's worth uh, being uh, being praising as well. And they're very good at winning the ball back and being aggressive. Also able to recover balls over the top. We saw them do a job on someone like Erling Haaland, but maybe we see where there is a little vulnerability with that praise. So on the ball, these two are not really going to beat you. They're not going to beat you with balls over the top to find people making runs. They're not going to pass through lines. They're not going to be able to to find Odegaard pocking up, finding a little pocket of space. They just don't really do that. They offer you little less, I want to say less security, but more safe passes. And at least in Gabriel's situation, actually. Um, offers you kind of passes, like we saw versus the one off the back off Zinchenko here, and then versus Bayern. Uh, so it looks like you can maybe frustrate this Arsenal side, especially when Zinchenko or when Jorginho and Thomas Partey aren't really playing in the side. And this is where Rice's faults show too, as I mentioned. So tactically, I think. Not having Havertz at striker and just doing what basically he was doing instead of the midfield. Instead, you kind of tried to fit Jesus in. Jesus didn't really offer you anything either. He's never really going to make runs off the shoulder, and you need to create space for Odegaard. So you need that. That's where Martinelli's miss really does show up. And another thing to say about that, with this team was flying. Absolutely. I mean, this team was wonderful to watch. Not only were they playing good football not only were they winning games and dominating them when it came to just not allowing any kind of xG against them at all. They were playing beautiful stuff. There's been a lot of talk of Arsenal are boring this year. After around January to around like mid March, that was not the case. But what happened is Martinelli got hurt after the in that Sheffield United game when Arsenal basically scored 5 goals in 20 minutes. And they just have not looked the same, since then. They've still been winning games, obviously, but they've not looked the same thing. So what usually works also is they're usually able to force the keeper to force teams to go back to the keeper, and then the keeper just boots it, and then they win back possession. They weren't able to do that with Emi Martinez, and that's kind of another thing too. Looking back, the decision to get rid of Emi Martinez has not been a positive one, as one could say, and he continues to kind of haunt them a little bit. Uh, anyways, that's kind of where we are. I mean, maybe a little positive here that I have for a note is not many teams can play this way. Not many teams really want their keeper touching the ball this much and it being that risk taking with it. So there is maybe some solace there. But yeah, brass tacks, they need Martinelli back. And then Gabriel and another thing too that I was thinking about is I mentioned how Gabriel and Saliba maybe not necessarily the best on the ball. It was such a stark contrast watching them versus say Paul Torres. It was also a stark contrast watching David Raya being pressed for Sammy Martinez. That's you brought David Raya to be good on the ball, and we haven't seen it. Now he obviously we've seen Ramsdale kind of be a little bit of a mess, but we've seen Raya be really he really likes doing those throws, those early throws. Sometimes they're able to to get stuff on that, but we haven't really seen Raya being able to really beat teams with his feet like I was kind of expecting because I saw this with Brentford. So I don't know why that's been the case. I can't say that they haven't benefited by having David Ray because he was spectacular for them in the Champions League versus I guess it was Sporting or Porto when he saved them in a PK shootout. But one last thing to kind of close off with is this is another game where Saka didn't look himself. He ended the game limping again. Didn't really feel like he was that impactful. He didn't really have Ben White to overlap him with. It looked like Odegaard was kind of taken out of the game in that second half. And I do think Arteta has maybe messed up playing him too much. And another thought I want to say on Saka, I think it's weird he's not praised more. If you told me someone at 21 was going to get 14 goals and 11 assists, and most of the goals are in open play. He's not the general PK taker. Or in 2022, or in then at 22, he gets 14 goals, where again he takes fewer PKs and 8 assists with 6 games still to go, so you can possibly match those numbers. I'd basically say you've got England's version of Vinny Jr. And it doesn't feel like Saka has been seen in that light. I don't really get it. He's always compared to other people. He's always attacked online. It seems. Uh, and the only thing to say about that is I think he hurts himself by playing so much. He's played more minutes than anyone at his age, or anyone that's under 24 years old. And it's the exact opposite approach that Arteta's taken with Saka that Pep took with Foden. And I don't really love, comparing the two players, but I will compare them here. Pep's baited Foden's minutes, and Foden is now 24. Now or 25. Now he's entered that age where he can play him a little bit more because he's now that his full adult self. Saka has not been given that opportunity. I do worry a little bit. He's been playing too much. And I don't you don't really want to see burnout, but I don't see where he's going to get a break now. So I blame Arteta a little bit for not managing his minutes better. Because if Arsenal beat Bayern, then they're going to have two games for City. Are you going to sit or Saka for City? Probably not. You're in a title running now. Are you going to sit Saka in a must-win game? You did it versus Luton Town, but you're probably not going to do that either. And then when it comes to in the summertime, England is going to be probably have a long you imagine campaign in Euros. Saka's probably going to start for them. So this is if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd actually kind of be semi nervous about this. I don't like Saka showing up and limping, playing through pain because you don't really see a time for him to recover and get some rest. So that's kind of the only thing to say there. And as far as what should Arteta do versus Bayern, I don't necessarily know if he's going to start Thomas Partey. He'll probably start Jorginho. I would probably play Thomas Partey a little bit. Another thing too is I would probably play Martinelli, and then play if you want to play Havertz in that midfield role. Uh, try Trossard as your nine. You're probably going to see Tomiyasu play it on the left, and not necessarily Zinchenko. But that's kind of where we're at. And then because of what Arsenal and Liverpool did, it was only compounded with what Man City did on Saturday. And I don't have to spend a ton of time on the game because it really wasn't that competitive. City to go on to win 5-1 over Luton Town, to get in the first goal in the first like 70 seconds with Hashiako own goal. Really unfortunate. Then Kovacic worldy. Then Holland PK caused by Jeremy Doku, and then Doku again benefits. Jeremy Doku was quite good, and it's funny what happens when you play a winger on the wing. Doku was quite good, and then Barkley was able to pounce on I think an Ederson error, and then Gvardiol was able to make it 5-1. You feel for Luton Town. This is not going to be a game that sends them up or down. It does hurt the goal differential. Um, but they've got a lot of injuries at the moment, and they're getting hit at like really the worst time. It seems like everyone else is kind of getting guys back. It feels like Luton are only losing more and more guys. And then with Man City had Real Madrid or have Real Madrid in the midweek, and this kind of selection kind of showed that Pep was thinking about that. No Rodri this game. Man City don't always play their best when Rodri misses games. No Foden, no John Stones. Grealish rested as well. Kyle Walker maybe is back. I think he was on the bench, so he might be back for the second fixture. But Pep kind of went with a different little lineup. We saw Rico Lewis, played at right back instead, and I think Pep's maybe going to regret not trying Rico Lewis more because he actually looks like he can do a job for them. He can do almost the John Stones stuff that the other center backs can't do. He's not Rico Lewis in the center back, but the other defenders can't do. And then Rico Lewis can get at it physically, but he has a great workhorse, and he has a great ability to get the ball in the turn and to make a quick decision. It's not easy to find players that are always really good at doing that. And then we saw Ruben Diaz and Akanji. Ruben Diaz again wasn't able to have his best defensive moment, at least on that Barkley moment. And then Gvardiol, and we've seen Gvardiol get forward a little bit more and cut inside a little bit more and show he's got a right foot. I didn't know he necessarily had that. And then Mateus Nunes and Kovacic with Kevin De Bruyne a little bit in front, and then Alvarez, Holland, and Doku. So this was basically it was still a strong lineup, but it was not a lineup that said we aren't thinking about Real Madrid. They definitely are. I don't really have to go. I kind of mentioned most of the goals. I mean, frankly, it was kind of amazing. It was only a one goal game, but yeah, this weekend could not have gone better for Pep. I mean, City's thing is a blue moon rising, and maybe the eclipse was a sign that this was going to happen. I don't know. I mean, it took a while for the second goal to come, but maybe that was some solace. But like 30 shots after like 60 minutes, they ended up with 37, 13 on target, five big chances, four missed, but 25 shots inside the box. 700 passes, 92%. It was what it was. I mean, Luton were not really competitive at all. Uh, and what's unfortunate for them is they maybe had a chance. They had a chance when it was maybe 2-1 or maybe 3-1. I think Carly Woodrow was able to get on the end of I think a cross sent in, and he hit the bar, and then I think that kind of gave Luton a little confidence that they could still kind of get in this. And by doing that, they maybe started to press a little bit more, and they ended up kind of losing their shape a little bit, and that just allowed Doku to kind of get the ball when he was completely with free space, completely unmarked. He was able to drive into the penalty area, and he was able to fool. I believe it was Oma Demide. He showed for the ball, but showed some quick feet as well, and just was able to he was fooled by Doku, kind of cutting around him. Brought him down PK, and then after that, after you've already given the PK, he was afraid of Doku, and Doku again was able to kind of fool him, and he was able to cut inside and then score. So Doku just took control a little bit in the second half, and yeah, it was the Doku show. And that's kind of it. I think he was involved with 4 of their 5 goals. Kevin De Bruyne looks to play in Holland's runs, and he's like the only one, so that's kind of funny. But that's kind of all to really talk about here. I mean, really, the main thing is Man City or like where they're at. If they win out, they're going to win another title, 4 in a row, maybe even 5 in a row. Uh, and yeah, that's a little little down on that. That was the only real negative to Arsenal kind of doing what they did after Liverpool. Is it really does put it in City's hands. Now, that said, they don't have the easiest fixtures away to Forest Ground. Liverpool had hell there. Maybe something can happen there. You start to look at fixtures. So there's maybe an away game to Fulham. That could maybe get something to happen. Fulham seem to just always pop up with a weird result here and there. They beat Spurs recently, smashing them. Liverpool have to play Fulham actually coming up, so a little nervy about that game as well. But maybe something can happen there where Rodrigo Munoz shows something, and then they still have West Ham. West Ham, have given them fits in the past. We don't necessarily know if I think that's the last game of the season though, so I hope that's not the only one. And they still have Spurs. And then there's maybe 1 or 2, maybe like Wolves or something. But the fixture list does set up fairly well for them. Wolves did beat them, to be fair, early in the season, but that was when Rodri was missing, I think, for a red card, and that was when Wolves had Pedro Neto. So I don't necessarily know if I'd put stock in that, but yeah, their City's fixture list are quite good, and the only thing is if they go on to beat Real Madrid, they have 2 more games with Arsenal, in between that. So does that end up kind of getting to you a little bit? Can you play Rodri in all those games? Can you play Rodri in 2 more Champions League games, versus Arsenal? And then, will he be able to play, in a midweek game or in an early Saturday game? That could maybe be where they could slip up. But yeah, Pep has to really like where he's at now, unfortunately. And with Luton Town, they're missing too many guys, and this does hurt their goal differential. One thing to talk about is Barkley did score a really nice goal. It was Ederson's mistake, but it was a really nice goal there. And they did somewhat defend well for about 75 minutes. So you can maybe say that there. But maybe I want to say here is it looks like Luton were absolutely smashed by the same City side. It was only a maybe a couple of months ago in the FA Cup. I think it was like 5-0 after about halftime. So at least we didn't necessarily see that. I mean, they still lost 5-1, but it was slightly more competitive. Um, and then Luton now have I think it's they have Brentford, and maybe I think it's Wolves, Everton, and West Ham now, and Fulham. So Fulham might not have anything to play for. So, but it is a bad time for them to have so many guys missing. But that's basically the title race, and that's kind of where we're at. And then we'll see how top 4 is going. I'll probably end after top 4 because I mentioned everyone else. So Newcastle and Tottenham, and Tottenham go on to lose 4-0, and it's first with Ishak, and then Gordon, and then Ishak again, and then Fabian Schär. And I was thinking this wouldn't be the worst fixture list to wake up to, but because there's been goals in a lot of these recently, but haven't really been competitive in a lot of these as well. But one thing to think about, Spurs won the first one 4-1. Richarlison was really involved in multiple goals, and Son played on the left that day. I think that showed up. I think Richarlison has been Apparently, he's picked up another knock. Spurs still have a chance to play City. That was the one I was maybe thinking about. But Spurs and maybe not going to be uh, the giant that we would expect. Now they're playing for the Champions League lives, so maybe that could be something. But no, what you're all saying, I do kind of fear a little bit. Son in the middle isn't necessarily good enough. Maybe we'll see Brendan Johnson actually play through the middle. That could be maybe what they do for striker. Maybe Son on the left, and then maybe Kulishevsky on the right, because we basically saw that as the change in the second half of this game. But they just Son wasn't good enough to hold on to the ball. That was giving them problems. Uh, Spurs like playing with their back line, and they finally found a defender, or they finally found an attacker that can at least match Mickey Van de Ven's pace, or if not better him. And Ishak kind of made Van de Ven kind of eat a little something. And the only thing to think about is Ange went with a bit of a different lineup. So he sat Sar again, so he went with Betancourt. And Betancourt was kind of trying to be involved a little bit in the attacking play. Bissell was sometimes doing it as well. And you always have Madison. Madison's almost like the Bruno Fernandez. He's like the number 10, kind of runs everywhere else. But the problem with that is he's leaving a lot of space to exploit. And if you're not really, using him for goals, you're actually just kind of, exploiting yourself elsewhere. And another thing you do is when you have your two fullbacks, you have Poor and Udogi, who have a free roll a little bit themselves, you're leaving a lot of areas, kind of open. And Newcastle went with a bit of a different lineup themselves. They kind of changed their shape. It was almost like a back three: Kraft, Shar, and Byrne. And then Murphy, Long, Bruno, and Elliott kind of your wing backs. And you have your front three of Gordon, Ishak, and Barnes. And what Newcastle had is you had three attackers that no matter what, it would always be a threat over the top, especially with Burrs playing a high line. And it didn't feel like Ange recognized that or respected that, and he should have. But it was a very weird game because honestly, if the first 20 minutes or so, it felt like, if anything, it was going to be Spurs that were scored. Two really early chances for Werner that were blown. Uh, and again, I think if Son has kind of played in his kind of position instead, or if the chances fall to Son, he probably does better. So really nice give and go here between Madison and Betancourt, but it's a tap in, and Werner gets it wrong, just kind of it almost like goes off his foot wrong. It goes like sideways. And then Brendan Johnson had a cross that Werner just couldn't control. This one's a little harder. It's a little easier to accept. The second one though, he had to do better on the tap in, or at least he had to get better contact. Werner's been a good signing. He's helped create it for others, but can he be the one to finish? That's always been kind of the issue with him. That's what Chelsea fans were always talking about. And then we get to the first goal, and Newcastle with Ishak, and again, to this point, I thought it would be an even game, if not maybe Spurs were the team on the front foot. Spurs again have another attack here, and Son gets the ball, but he can't. He doesn't really have options, and he goes for maybe a back heel, and Madison doesn't read it, and they lose it, so turnover, and then just Bruno just boots it upfield, hoping a hopeful ball to Anthony Gordon, if anything, and Gordon here does really well to body off Udogi first, and then he plays a through ball to Ishak to chase Spurs, to chase, and then Spurs are just cut open. And after Van de Ven kind of sprints to close down on Ishak, Ishak then cuts inside to go past him, putting Van de Ven on his face, turning him into a meme. And then Ishak's able to finish in the corner. And some player that Newcastle have found. This is uh, this was getting a few goals in the season when he was only getting a few goals a season when he was in Spain playing for Sociedad, and he looks as good as any striker in the Prem right now. I think minutes per played, he does have the number one when it comes to goals per minutes per played, and he beating the likes of Holland, Watkins, and Salah, and he looks a real star. And he wasn't done in the game as well. And again, it's small, but it's brilliant to hold the run that he does too, for Gordon to play him in. So a little composure in the box as well. When he gets in, he's able to cut around Van de Ven. He still has finish. And I honestly couldn't help but try to think of Nunez in this position, and I cried a little bit inside. So terrific recruiting by Newcastle's boardroom to pick him out. And then a terrific play also for Anthony Gordon. And Newcastle's board also picked out Anthony Gordon, and he's been quite a revelation for them as well, because he did not look like this at Everton. I thought he was just kind of a bombing, pacing kind of wide player. Gordon's got a little technicality to him, and he's always had his pace. But man, does he make the right decisions in the final third, and it's not easy to do here. So, he wasn't playing on his preferred side. He's playing on the right, and he does a good job here to make the right decision. He gets the right pass to play Ishak in, gives him the right the way to pass for Ishak to be able to control. And then Gordon also is warded a little bit with his play here. Set up the first goal and is able to get the second one. And it only comes a couple minutes after, or even a minute after they get in the first. So here, um, it's really this one's self-inflicted. Maybe the first one was as well, but this one really was. I think Pedro Porro just plays a really poor ball backwards, and Mick Van de Ven again is forced to defend. Gordon 1v1. He cuts inside it, go past him again. I think Van de Ven even goes to ground again. And Gordon's able to find the corner to beat Vicario. But it's fitting that Gordon gets the goal here because he's basically running at Vicario all by himself, and it forces Vicario to freak. And it's after that where Newcastle then kind of squeeze upfield. They see the press is on, and they get Pedro Porro to make the mistake that costs them. And Newcastle weren't really high pressing in the beginning of that half, but they picked their moments when they did, and they were rewarded with it because you had to remember Newcastle have Dan Burn, they've had Emil Kraft, they have Shar. They don't really have a lot of pace back there, and they were just picking their moments when to do it. But another thing too is they were doing a really good job to frustrate Son. Son wasn't really getting played the ball, and Son was oftentimes kind of looking for it, running back into midfield to try to be an option. And by doing that, that allowed the Newcastle line to play a little higher up because you didn't really have anyone making a run off your shoulder as well. I mean, maybe you had Brennan Johnson, but I thought that was maybe a mistake that they were lacking, and we actually saw Son taken off in halftime, maybe for that reason. But a fairly even game before the goals. I thought another thing too is Newcastle basically allowing Spurs to have majority of the ball, so it almost felt like they set up to defend and then to counter. Uh, and then with Spurs, it was a case of take your chances when you create them and stop teams. Creating stop teams when they create chances against you, and Mickey Van de Ven wasn't able to do the first, and then Timo Werner was failed to do the second. Which also with another knock was really showing up again. As I mentioned that before, and then another thing too was because the way that Son was running towards the ball, I think was backfiring. And then uh, when you don't have another thing to say is there was a lot of transition moments, and it doesn't really matter when you have a lot of the ball. Even if you have 70% of it, if you don't have 100%, any moment you lose the possession, there's always a threat over the top or in behind you. And Newcastle's front line, plays into their own hands. They've got the pace to do that. And then we saw basically, bad turn to worse for Spurs. Pedro Porro had to go off for a muscle injury, and I think Emerson Royal was the replacement, and that's not like for like, so that ended up hurting them. And then basically 3-0, this killed the game off, where Son has the ball, but he gets it poked off him, and then as good as he is at kind of as a player, his hold of play maybe isn't the best, and Bruno basically bullies him off the ball, and then he sees H-Stack making a run behind, and plays a very similar ball that Tielemans played for Ollie Watkins. And as Van de Ven, as pacey as he is, isn't able to catch up. And Ishak then was able to finish his 1v1. And again, uh, it's a player that really doesn't feel like he has a lot of weakness. The long stride, the long legs to dribble with, the balance he has, he's shifty and nimble for his size, the ball striking and finishing. He does feel to have it all. And then we got the changes. We got Betancourt and Bitsuma and Son off for Shar, Kulishevsky and Hoiberg. And then we saw Brennan Johnson at striker through the middle, Kulishevsky on the right. Son wasn't really staying high to be an outlet. And then they did get a chance with Brennan Johnson, but that was kind of iffy. And then Newcastle got the fourth with Shar after what it looks like. Harvey Barnes and Gordon maybe connected where Gordon had a shot that was just kind of blocked off. So good chemistry between those two as well. And yeah, I did not see this coming. Spurs have all that pace in their side. Newcastle, have a makeshift back line as well. Uh, Spurs have been good defensively when Van de Ven and Christian Romero had played together. And again, Spurs won this game comfortably just back in December. But and I felt like they started the better side. But as the game went on, any turnover, it felt like the opposite. Newcastle were the team on the front foot posing problems. And frankly, Van de Ven didn't meet his match with Alexander Isak. But also Barnes and Gordon were causing problems as well. But it was a very, very strange game. Passing number was 123 for Newcastle, 65% accuracy. That's like that's one of the lowest numbers I've seen from any team all season that isn't Luton Town. Uh, it was earlier when Luton Town were just trying to find their feet. Luton have been better in that regard. But yeah, 27% of the ball. Tottenham had 73, but 18 and 5 shots for Newcastle, and Tottenham with 11 and 2. So that's kind of shows up where it is too. 16 corner kicks as well for a team that did not have only more than 30% of the ball is a bit wild. So they weren't able. They didn't have the ball when they got it. They were very good at advancing it forward. Five big chances as well, and yeah, it felt like they just kind of sat. They had a game plan to sit without the ball and to just be as direct as possible when they got it. Sometimes it doesn't always come off, but here it did. Another thing, it really was a makeshift back line. Jacob Murphy as kind of your right wing back or maybe fullback when you're looking at the lineup. It was completely reshuffled. Dan Burn sometimes has been played as a fullback, and here another center back as well. And Fabian Schär had to kind of man that back line, and he did a pretty good job of doing it. So different tactics, but it worked out, and that's another thing. That's what a good manager does. I've talked about that with Ten Hag when sometimes you just gotta fit a game plan or style to the team that you have, the team you have available, and you can't play a high line. You can't really play a pressing style with that kind of back line. You just can't do it. And so he was able to find a way to he went to almost like a 5-4-1 formation, where it was just Ishak kind of being the front man. Sometimes it was a 3-4-3, but you always had it was always kind of you always had cover with those with those center backs, with those slow center backs that don't really have any pace. And you have Spurs have Son, they have Werner, and they have Brennan Johnson. They've got pace in their attack to get in behind them. So you had to recognize and game plan for that. And Eddie Howe was able to do it. And just yeah, so another reason to praise Eddie Howe. And then Ishak really is a complete forward. I made a joke with my friend Seth group that Real Madrid should think about him, not necessarily Mbappe, and it's only a joke. But to me, Ishak looks like an evolved version of Benzema, where Mbappe isn't really a pure number nine, and I don't really know how Mbappe and Vinny would necessarily work together. But we'll probably see it, so it doesn't really matter. But it's more a case of praising Ishak, and I think the only negative I can say is maybe is his fitness, his reliability isn't always that great because we've gone 2 seasons now where he has missed a lot of game time. But that said, he's missed a lot of game time, and he's still a 20 goal scoring striker, where he's not taking PKs, or maybe he's taking a few PKs. But yeah, that's just kind of the only thing. Also, is will they be able to keep him? They've got they've. It'll be very interesting to see what Newcastle's able to do. Because they also have some issues elsewhere in the squad. Center back. I think they're short in midfield as well. Longstaff. I don't know how many. I don't know if they can do another season with him. If their aim is to be more than what they've been, and I've actually been impressed that Newcastle are not that far away points wise from maybe catching West Ham or catching the other teams that are close to that final Europe spot. They're not going to catch. You're not going to get top four, but you can maybe catch the team that's in sixth. And then with Spurs, yeah, not the best Saturday for them. I thought they really did miss Richarlison. I thought Ange was surprised that Van de Ven just couldn't handle the striker on his own. Uh, but another thing too is they were outdueled everyone on the pitch. I didn't understand benching Sarr. Betancourt maybe it was there for passing through lines. And sometimes Sarr, we've seen Sarr and Basuma kind of get Orange frustrating, but I think Sarr's the better player now. So I didn't understand it. I feel like that was maybe a mistake as well. You missed Pedro Porro now to a hamstring injury. He's been one of your more important players. So how are you going to? You can't really do what you've been doing with Emerson Royal. So yeah, it's Spurs falling apart right right as the City and Arsenal fixtures are coming, and then with Timo Werner, he had one of those games that Chelsea fans doing. Yeah, I told you so. And then the other thing I want to say is Madison is starting to be a bit of a iffy one. Bruno Fernandesy. Too many players having a free role in this team. You can't do it with the number 10 player and then the two fullbacks. Otherwise, just to roam wherever they want because you can't be sloppy on the ball if you do that. And if you do that, then you need either your center backs to put out fires or you need your DMs to do that. And again, that's where I'm surprised Sarr was benched because Sarr is really good at making a lot of ground. I thought Basuma was not doing enough to offer protection. I thought he was too far ahead of the play. Where yeah, it was just the center backs were just hung out to dry. So I did not think this worked out. So we'll see. We'll see what he's able to to think about. Going forward. Ange has usually been able to make some changes to the squad. So I have a feeling he'll be able to do that. So well, but yeah, I don't really know what he'll be able to do as far as striker goes. The Brendan Johnson has been so good at creating for others, but maybe you need to play him through the middle until you get Richarlison back. Son through the middle isn't working. So, anyways, and then Bournemouth and Man United. Let's see. To do. What do you have to do? Don't really want to go all the way through. Uh, Basically, kind of just quickly run down through Bournemouth and Man United. It does end 2-2 with Solanke, then Bruno, and then Kluivert and Bruno with the free kick. There really wasn't a ton to talk about because it's the same kind of situation that we've seen. I mean, Bournemouth were creating chance after chance, and it was down uh, down I guess United's right side. Garnacho, Dallo were not really offering any cover. Dallo was sometimes leaving the Cambrala defender kind of on his backside. Solanke actually scores his first goal because Cambrala actually kind of slipped. Speaking of slipping. There was a lot of that this weekend. Fortunately, the youngster did that, and Solanke was able to finish. But it really, Bournemouth could have been up, four or five goals. Again, similar story that we've always seen. And the only maybe reason why it wasn't is because Sinisterra, who's on flyer for them for Bournemouth in the beginning, had to go off hurt, and they don't really have a lot of replacements available. Uh, it's Tavernier is out injured, and a couple of other of their attackers were out injured. And so they had to play Kirkus. They moved who was the fullback into basically the attacking role, and Bournemouth kind of attacks stalled a little bit after that. So a little unfortunate that we didn't necessarily see a little bit more, and then Bournemouth were creating chance after chance with Ryan Christie was running onto loose balls and feeding things in. It was always really easy for Bournemouth to recognize where the space was. Man United were just open, and what I mean by open is just open space, which just there's no no body there. Man United just were down disorganized. It was almost like one, they don't really play with a midfield, but two, your attackers just stay upfield, and then your defenders, play in this kind of line. And it's not even like the stretching, like the slinky that I've talked about. It's almost like they're just like separate units. And the defenders are supposed to put out fires, and then the attackers, when they get it, are supposed to score the goals. And that's just almost like the setup. I don't feel like Ten Hag really wants it to be that way, but that's what it feels like. And you can't play that way in this kind of game because a really good example of that is if say if Dallo is a fullback and he's got a wide player to attack it to look at. That's one player. And if say if Clivert runs over to be an extra number, now Dallo has to do two players. Now if the opposing fullback makes a run, now that fullback has to mark three players. How is he supposed to do that if you're not going to have people shifting over and doing responsibilities to mark their own man? Garnacho wasn't doing that, and that's why he was taken off. But it wasn't just him. Rashford wasn't doing it either. Bruno wasn't doing it. Bruno is a weird one where he has a lot of work rate without the ball, but it's like it's not what you want. Bruno will chase where the ball is, and what he's doing is he's just leaving that space. And so now you have a giant space to cover with only two people, and it's Casemiro and Kobe Mano. Kobe Mano is 19. Casemiro doesn't have legs anymore, and to Avedon, it's really easy to just run where it's to a point where you can't cover it all. You can't cover all that ground. And Bournemouth are really good at recognizing where to run at, get the ball, turn, and then to find players. And it's just time and time again. It's that situation every single game. So I don't have to really go into detail there. Not a lot happened in the second half. A couple controversy calls. The Adam Smith handball kind of gifted Man United a penalty I didn't really think they deserved. And then there was a late PK for Bournemouth that was reversed. I thought that was a little shaky, but it is what it is. 2-2. It's probably what it deserved. Bournemouth, ran out of legs a little bit in the second half. Only 12 shots first half, 8 in the second half. 3 big chances though, but a lot of their chances really did come in the first half. You didn't. They easily could have been out of sight, out of mind, and they weren't. Man United only had 8 shots all game, and 2 on target. They were better though, at least out of possession. I mentioned how they weren't doing that work in the first half. They were slightly doing a little better job in the second half, but this was rough. So I mean, I guess sticking with Bournemouth, what a job that Areola has done. But that's kind of another thing too. Areola, out coached, Man United's Ten Hag, and I don't think Man United fans want to hear that. Because Bournemouth understood where United was sitting off them and how they could find open spaces. They recognized how to move the ball and manipulate Man United a little bit. And I think I saw a stat that Man United faced basically it's either the second most or the most shots all season, and Sheffield, maybe Sheffield have a little bit more, but they're basically neck and neck. And Sheffield, with that said, not just shots faced, Sheffield have conceded the more goals than anyone ever in the EPL, and like ever. So that's kind of just shows where United are defensively. And just a similar story all year. Not tracking runners, not defending, attacking from the attacking players. Whether it's not just Garnacho. It was Bruno, it was Rasmus. Bruno was just doing his own thing. He wasn't it was not organized. So it just you kept seeing midfield runners, making runs. And that's another thing too. If you have someone out wide, say you have, the winger or you maybe have a fullback and Dallow's kind of, managing him, he does a cutback cross. And you've got your attacking players, or you've got your center backs are worried about, maybe a Solanke or who's next to Solanke. And then you have a trailing runner who's just wide open, top of the box, who's unmarked because you can't mark everyone and the timings kind of got you. That was happening again. That was happening, Ryan Christie got onto a couple of those. Clivert got onto a couple of those. So it was just, it's Casemiro exposed because he can't cover all that ground by himself. You're playing every game with Harry Maguire. So yeah, every week I kind of go at 99. So I'm not going to necessarily go about that. Uh, One thing I will say is I thought Ten Hag made a howler a little bit on his adjustments. One thing you can go at him for that as well. So leaving Casemiro on and then taking Mano off from Mount, I thought that was making things worse. So you're leaving one of your one guys that can actually do something for you as far as covering ground, and instead you brought on Mason Mount to try to win the game, and all Mason Mount does is he leaves that area, and you're leaving Casemiro exposed. Uh, Another thing too is they can't seem to get going out Rasmus Hoyland involved at all. So I don't really understand the reason for that. It was not really the best day for Kampala, but he's so young you can't really excuse. You can excuse that. You can't really go at him for that. I don't really think it's great though that Ericsson had took Garnacho off, and he's almost seemed to try to make an example of him, and then Garnacho ended up responding by liking stuff online about that, and it resembles a little bit of the Sancho situation, which all he's been doing has been flying for Dortmund. So I think there's issues a little bit in that dressing room. It's not just, I mean, Ten Hag's definitely part of it, but it's not just that. The decision making has been horrendous. Maybe it is Ten Hag, but the decision making, not just on the field as far as pitch decisions, but outside it, has been really bad too. I've mentioned it before. Their decision to sell Anthony Elanga or to just give him up to Nottingham Forest when they had an issue on that right side the whole time has been just remarkable. Uh, and then I don't really get why Rasmus Højlund and Marcus Rashford don't really work well together, but they don't. They don't really like looking for each other. Bruno is Bruno, and again he likes looking for the ball higher upfield, but that means he's leaving the two midfielders alone, and it's harder to find him as well. So he hurts you that way as well. Yeah, it's this is it every single week about them. And Eric Ten Hag isn't blameless. But he looks to do kind of the same thing he did with Ronaldo to any player who crosses him. So that's not great. But again, this is way too familiar to anyone that's followed this club. That's watched them over the years. They lack an identity. They lack an ability to defend as a unit. Lack an ability to play a controlled game, and their star players are not running enough. as brass tacks as that is. Going forward, whoever they do target needs to have that in consideration. Can you run and cover distance, or at least as far as defending goes? And then another thing too is it looks like players are down tooling and maybe looking to get him sacked. I don't know. They did this with Ragnick. They did it with Ollie. And so that's kind of where we're at. And then, I mentioned how the relegation fight went, Nottingham Forest and Wolves 2-2. The only thing to really talk about is Cunha with 2 goals. First one, a really wonderful one. It looks like they actually had a chance to even win the game, or Forest had a chance to win the game with Origi. But overall, it was probably fitting. It was a draw. Nottingham Forest still can't defend set pieces. That's kind of a problem as well. But and they're still not out of this, but at least that stadium gives them hope. They seem to play better at that stadium. They do feel like they play a little bit more expansive. You can understand what they're trying to do. In this game, they couldn't get Chris Wood involved, but that was maybe the only negative. But they did enough to maybe win the game, and Wolves did enough to at least be competitive. They did get Cunha back. They were able to play Wang back in the second half. That helped them out a little bit as well. I think they even get the corner kick because Wang was able to help them out with that. One of the moves that Gary O'Neill did is he started Tommy Doyle playing a little advanced, and then he moved him back into midfield. So that was a good change by Gary O'Neill. And just I think I mentioned it, every single game week they only injuries is probably going to keep Wolves from dreaming of maybe a Europe kind of finish. But I just don't think the injuries is kind of taking them out of it. It's a makeshift back line too. No Craig Dawson again, so you're having him play this guy Brano and Brano Kilman and Tati Gomez, but also no Ait Nori. He's been a flyer for them for the last few weeks, and it looks like he's got a calf injury. And then, Brentford and Sheffield kind of mentioned that game before. Brentford go on to win 2-0 in a must-win game. Arm Blaster with the own goal, unfortunate for them. And then Onyeka makes it the second one. Uh, Really good result for Brentford, and really good way for them to bounce back. They were able to bounce back for first Aston Villa, and then they do it here, and they were without Ayer, but able to get Pennick back, so that was a bonus as well. And then the other bonus is Mikkel Damsgaard is starting to really look a player for them. Two games in a row where he's shown up where he was important for for a couple of those goals last week. In the second half for Aston Villa, and he plays a role obviously in the first one, and then looked like he maybe even scored a really wonderful volley. And Thomas Frank has taken a while for him to insert him a little bit into the squad, but it looks like he's the kind of player that they've been missing. They need something from him. I was wondering maybe it would be Yamaluk, but he offers them a little something different. Offers them maybe a little more creation because they were really struggling to get their attackers involved. I know Ivan Toney in this game as well, so it's a bonus to win that game. Without him, they weren't really able to find Mopai the ball. I think the only real chance in the first half really came from Sheffield having a mistake at the back, and Mopai was nearly able to get a touch on it, but that was pretty much it. Uh, and then with Sheffield, a decent momentum boost to somewhat at least be competitive. They actually had a really good game last week versus Chelsea, where they actually outplayed Chelsea for large parts of that game. But yeah, here it didn't necessarily go too well because they were able to get Bremerton Diaz in behind, but he was lacking on the finish, and that was really it. They weren't really able to get a whole lot of creation. They played competitively, but because they only had 8 shots and 2 on target. Brentford had 9 and 5. Uh, but best possession was about even. It was very cagey game. Wasn't a whole lot in it, but it doesn't matter because Brentford get the 3 points and big exhales for Brentford at fan contingency. But the job's not done, and the reason why I say that is they could still maybe get dragged back a little into it. If they face if they if they lose, I guess to Luton, and Luton are a mess, but Carlton Morris is a real threat in the air, and Flecken and Brentford have not been great at always dealing with those crosses. So Panic back, maybe that'll change. That'll help them. And then kind of moving on to Brighton and Burnley. Brighton and Burnley finished draw 1-1. Kind of mentioned it with the goalkeeper errors. One thing to touch on though is Burnley were playing some pretty good stuff in that first half. They easily could have been up, a couple goals up. Odeberg was really nice with his delivery, and then it felt like just the second half just changed. Everything just flipped. Burnley had majority possession versus Brighton. That's not something you normally see.
And then I think they ended up the second half with like 33% of the ball. Brighton were much better at being a little bit more direct, much better at getting Burnley to kind of turn the ball over. The conditions were not necessarily that great. But Brighton, it's another one of those games where they played well, but they just weren't really able to finish. One positive though was Yao Pedro played and looked quite good playing on the left. Uh, Adingra is always looking to be positive, and Carlos Bebe had a mistake that maybe led to the first goal, but I thought for the most part he played well, and just the only issue was and maybe another bright spot was Ansu Fati was able to come on and he got maybe 15 minutes into his legs and was able to look dangerous, which is good that they have someone like him because it looks like they maybe will be without Inciso the rest of the season. But it was close. Where Burnley almost did the unthinkable. They almost got a big 3 points. Getting them closer to where they have that game versus Sheffield. Where if you win that game, maybe you'd be only a point or two off Luton, and they weren't able to do that. So points dropped here. Points dropped last week as well. So unfortunate for there. And then I'll move on to. I already mentioned what happened with Chelsea, Chelsea and Everton. Everton look an absolute mess, and Eh, good for Chelsea to come in with some momentum where they have the FA Cup now with Man City, and the only thing I'll say about that is a couple weeks in a row now we've seen Thiago Silva played. He's back fit and he's back in the starting 11. Will we see that versus Man City versus Erling Haaland? I would be very wary of that. Now, Chelsea rely on Thiago Silva to be good with the ball at his feet, but even in this game, they win 3-0, but Everton had some pretty good chances. Beto was getting the better of Thiago Silva again in this game. So if the chances that Beto was getting, if Holland was in those situations or positions, I think Holland probably does put him away. So I would be a little worried about that. The other thing to think about with next week is Cole Palmer. Man City didn't think he was good enough. So does he kind of come in with a little cold shoulder? We'll have to see. But and with Everton, I do wonder. I don't know where you go for goals. Only Decore is the one you can maybe point to. They're not really able to get him involved. Pickford having poor, showing some bad confidence. They look really rough. And then mentioned it with Fulham and West Ham. Fulham do go on to win 2-0 with two nice goals from Andres Pereira. It's a very weird game, but West Ham had majority of the ball, and then Fulham were actually the team on the counter. But honestly, it was a situation where they could have scored 4 or 5 the number of times that they were able to get in behind, and they finally were able to get the second. West Ham without Jared Bowen, that's kind of showing up a little bit as well. Yeah. Uh, let's see. Six big chances for Fulham and four missed. 60% of 60% of the ball for West Ham. That's not something you normally see. A lot of passing numbers for West Ham as well. Normally, you'd think that was a positive, but unfortunately for them, it was a lot of side to side. It was not really aggressive stuff. The only player that was really looking to go forward was Lucas Paqueta. Yeah, not necessarily great for West Ham, and they have they're only 2 goals down to Bayern Leverkusen. Bayern Leverkusen just enjoyed chugging boots after winning the Bundesliga. So maybe if you get Bowen back, maybe Kudus can get on a flyer. 2 goals is something you can make up. Moyes went with Ings. He tried Ings and Antonio. That didn't really work out. I don't really get why Maxwell Cornet isn't able to get involved. Uh, the other thing to talk about is they had a kid that got on a debut and ended up kind of having a bit of a head injury, which was a bit of a scare. Hopefully the kid is okay. I think his name is Earthly, George Earthly. But other than that, yeah, that's kind of where we're at with West Ham. And another thing too is uh, this is there's been a lot of fans that don't really know what to do with David Moyes, and I don't really know either because I kind of sense their frustration. And there are a lot of games where it feels like this happens. They're not really able. They don't seem to have necessarily an identity to play other than catching teams on the break or maybe getting relying on hero ball from say a Bowen or maybe a Kudus. There's been links that they might lose Lucas Paqueta next year to Man City, and if that's the case, who do they go to play those attackers in? Because Lucas Paqueta has been players of the season really. But at the other point of that is West Ham were in a situation that someone like an Everton would kill for. Well, uh, you know, former uh, David Moyes' former Everton boss, as you can say, or a number, a Palace, because West Ham have been in the situations where they, in those dying moments where they can't, fighting for their lives to stay up. There was only last season where they were like that. And here they're fighting for a sixth place finish. Maybe even a chance if they can beat Leverkusen, maybe a chance to even think about Europa semifinals. So I don't really know what to necessarily do with them. And then with Fulham, Fulham are in a weird situation where you don't really know what they have to play for. But that's they're a scary side. And, they've got Liverpool next, and, all they did last time they played Liverpool when it was at Anfield is they led twice, and that was the game that Alexis McAllister scored a wonder goal, so did Endo, and then Trent Alexander had to actually come on and win the game at the very last minute. That was I think it was like a 4-3 kind of game. So that could be a bit of a nervy game as well, just in the next game for them, and you don't really know what Fulham is gonna turn up, but, that's kind of it. That's where we are for the midweek action, and we'll be back next week to talk about what happens in the FA Cup semifinals, and then I think there are a couple games that actually play happen in the league as well. Arsenal play on Saturday, I believe, late on Saturday as well. So we'll be back to cover about that as well. And till then, you stay squatty and stop recording.